And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, September 27th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. 12 games to talk about today. We've already talked about them a little bit earlier, but we have seen one change that is interesting for the slate. Lance McCullers, get on out of there. Luis Garcia, come on in. That is the only change that we have that's going to be very big, but it is something that we could talk about that is slightly different. So hit that like button before we get started. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter if you can. Handles are on the screen. Adam, how was your afternoon?
It was great. Nothing noteworthy about it. Just nice Tuesday afternoon, I guess.
Yeah. I tried to take a nap. Couldn't fall asleep. Woke up, took the dog to the vet. No changes. Still taking medication. Still gross as shit. And that was my day so far. Fun stuff. Shout out to George for the 50 gifted Stokastic memberships on YouTube. So giant chunk of people are about to get a membership as they get in the door. So thank you very much for that. That is a lot. Here it comes. Here comes the list. YouTube's about to break. Get ready, Jordan. It's all going to ruin it on the back end for you. Here they come. Coming in. All sorts of... Torkelson Snorkels was gifted a membership. There we go. Good to see. It's coming in. All right. I got nothing else to ramble about. We have 12 games to talk about. We can take our time getting through some of it now that we have some updated information. Are you ready to get started?
Yep.
There we go. That's what I needed to hear. Nats and Braves. 3.6 run implied total for the Nationals, 5.1 for the Braves. Paolo Espino and Kyle Muller going for Atlanta. Muller, okay, 7,400 here, showing up at about 9% top two pitcher odds, 10% value. I think he looks all right given the matchup. We got him projected for 5% ownership. I had 10 on my last go around. Sort of like anything in that 5 to 10% range seems about right.
We have him at 9.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and grab that update. Well, like I said, anything in that 5 to 10% range seems about right.
Yeah, right there with you. 7,400. Good enough pitcher, good enough price tag. He'd probably be pulling more ownership if you didn't have Sandoval and Marquez and Webb at just broken pricing on this slate. But still a good matchup for him going up against Washington. Not a very good offense. Just seems like you said, a 5 to 10% pitcher.
Yeah. It's really underwhelming to talk about because he's a complete afterthought for the slate, but there's nothing wrong with him.
No, projects to be, good enough.
Yeah.
Again, I think he'd be really popular if you just didn't have Logan Webb and Patrick Sandoval at that price point. 23 starts at AAA this year, 134 and 2/3 innings pitched. Solid strikeout stuff there. 29.3% strikeout percentage, 3.52 FIP. Zips projects him with a 23.6% strikeout percentage in the majors going forward. Looks like a good enough pitcher. Just, probably not as good as Patrick Sandoval and Logan Webb.
Anything for Espino? I can't imagine the answer is yes.
I can't imagine either.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about the Braves. First in top stack. Not exactly a great value stack, but they are number one in ownership as well. They were number one in my top stack tool. I am still getting to the Braves, even with this current ownership mark. They're in about 10% of my lineups, 10% of my 5-man. So I like them. Maybe not as much as the field, but clearly one of the best offenses you could roster today.
Yeah, plenty of ownership coming in there. So, on a 12-game slate in large field tournaments, if you go somewhere else, certainly not going to blame you. But it is a good spot for Atlanta. Espino does have some power issues. Throughout his career, it's mostly been right-handed power that's given him problems. There's a lot of that in this Atlanta lineup. 200 expected ISO to righties, 176 to lefties. Certainly not saying that to knock Matt Olson or Michael Harris. They both look really good as well. But more just reiterating that, Acuna, Swanson, Riley, Contreras, these guys all look really, really good here against Espino.
Yep. I have double digits of Acuna, of Riley, of Harris. I got to a bunch of Vaughn Grissom at 3,600. I just like the idea of having chunks of these Atlanta bats that at Washington's Park
you
plays.
Might want to get off Vaughn Grissom.
Did that lineup come out in the past couple of minutes?
Half hour.
Yep, there it is. Previous crunch, man. What do you want me to do here? We'll rerun it while we're here. Anything you want to talk about for the Nats bats against Mueller?
Not really. I think he's a solid enough pitcher. Lane Thomas at 3,400 looks okay. We know Joey Meneses has power, but he's gotten expensive. Luke Voit 3,300 looks fine, but nothing that really stands out to me on a 12-game slate. And then on top of that, you also have Meneses and Voit playing the same position, so you can't even play them together on DraftKings, which makes it even less appealing than it already was.
I'm gonna skip what I was about to do, which would be ask you for game number 2, and we would move forward. I want to ask you about your tweet from earlier. Why can't I think of the word now?
Mount
For
Rushmore.
president. There you go. For president's faces. Mount Rushmore of sports. I know you mentioned Jordan and LeBron was a thought process to you. Did you give any thought process to anybody else? I said somebody mentioned Ali in your responses, which is like obviously a pretty good one that you could swap out. I think it would swap out for Bonds in that case, but
yeah, probably. I hadn't thought about Ali, but that I thought that was a reasonable mention.
Yeah.
Tom Brady was probably my 5th just based on winning, but I don't think football is just a weird sport to say oh, this is the best football player ever. And I certainly don't think. I mean, maybe it is, but there's definitely an argument with a lot of players there. And then in Jordan's case, obviously he has the brand, which is why I put him ahead of LeBron. So yeah, that's why I had them ahead of Brady. But I think Brady probably would have been my 5th.
I think I would have Ali ahead of Brady. I think there's a case to be made that Ali would be ahead of Bonds in a way. Just because
I honestly don't know enough about boxing. Obviously I know Ali was great and everything. I have no idea how he actually stacks up with.
I mean, he was exceptional and obviously the second most, but probably the most recognizable boxer ever. Anywhere you would go, Tyson probably second, and then that's about it.
Right.
But I was trying to think: is there anybody? Mark Langford. Tyson was better than Ali. That's a preposterous take. The only other person I could think of that would be a reasonable answer, I think, was Serena Williams.
Yeah, I thought I saw other people say that and thought it was reasonable.
But how are we going to do that? We got to put male tennis player on there first, right?
I mean, I don't know who that would be though.
No, it couldn't. This current generation of Nadal, Fed, and Djokovic all becoming the 3 greatest tennis players that have ever lived at the exact same time kind of breaks everything in those
Did you watch the Scott Fish documentary?
I did not.
I haven't finished it, but I started watching it, and he was talking about that. He was like, it's insane, the way that this generation of tennis ended up shaking out. Because he was talking about Andy Roddick and how because I
know they used to live together and shit.
Yeah, and they live together and everything. And he was talking about how all the all of the expectations that were on Roddick, because it was we need an American tennis player that can win and blah blah blah. And it's not Roddick's fault that he just ran into the 3 greatest tennis players to ever play at the same time. There's nothing he can do about that.
Yeah, male tennis just at a peak for I don't know the past decade at this point. But yeah, I can't think of anybody else in any other sports that would be correct to add. You can't add Jimmy Johnson from NASCAR or something like that. That's preposterous. So I ran out of thoughts. I don't think there are too many answers that you could have there that are viable.
Yeah, I think it's the 4 I named: LeBron, Brady, Ali, Serena.
Jordan chiming in the chat saying Michael Phelps. Yeah, no, absolutely not. That's an insane take. If they let Usain Bolt run backwards and he got to skip for some of the races, then he could have picked up a bunch of extra gold medals too. But that's not how this works. Love Phelps though.
The question was, who's on your Mount Rushmore of athletes, any sport?
I love that the first response that I saw to the actual question, not to your response, but the question itself, was 5 people. I was like, you're a moron. Just when people do that, people just don't understand what this means. You got to pick 4. There's no wiggle room here. This is just how this whole process works. Yeah, even MMA, you couldn't really do anybody. Fedor is a decent shout, but I'd be more likely to put GSP there before I put Fedor there. But I don't think that any one of them have the cultural significance to pass anybody out.
I literally have never seen that person's name before in my life.
So Fedor was the heavyweight GOAT for basically ever.
Okay.
Just fighting in Japan, smashing people at a time. But like, had a little bit of a belly on him. He's just like a crazy Russian dude that smashed people.
Why does Kyle keep just saying Gretzky with more and more question marks? Like,
that's a no doubt about it, number
right.
one. He's got to be on. And like, it's so simple. So simple.
Like, he might just be trying to add Gretzky, which, because like we hadn't mentioned him because like he's just obviously there.
Yeah. Gretzky, a basketball representative. I think it has to be Jordan in this case, but Gretzky and a basketball representative
legacy, I think,
and Tiger are three have to be there.
Yeah, that to me, the only spot up for debate is the Bonds spot.
Agreed. I think I would put Ali ahead of Bonds, but Bonds is also the best baseball player I've ever seen. And it's not close. Like, Bonds was better at baseball than Ali was better at boxing.
Right. Yeah, Kyle, we're referring to a tweet that I had where I did mention him.
Yeah. Yeah, Gretzky just doesn't count because it's too obvious.
Yeah, let's hit on my four answers for anyone confused were Gretzky, Tiger, Bonds, and Jordan.
You can make a decent case for Hulk Hogan, but we're not going to go there. Not real and all. Julio had a super chat on FC. If two players are showing up together too frequent, is there a way to cap that exposure of them together to a given percentage? No.
Nope.
Yeah, no way to
can do is just set a group where it's like if player A, then take 5% off the projection for player B. That would do what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Or run two separate countries where like they can be together and then they can't be together, and then you merge them together and you're closer to what that's supposed to be. But no, there is no mechanism to do that right out of the gate. Okay. If Bond sucks, then everyone sucks.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to game number 2 now. I killed enough time. Blue Jays and Yankees. 4-run implied total on both sides. Coin flip game. Jose Berrios and Jameson Taillon. No ownership really going to either one of these arms. If you were going to get to one of these guys, is it Taillon or is it Berrios?
I guess it's Berrios just because he's $1,000 less expensive. I think they're kind of similar in that the matchup sucks. Neither one of them is great. Berrios certainly has had his share of bad starts this year, but he's also only 6,300. Realistically, I don't think I get to much of either one, but I would assume I just get to the cheaper one first.
Yeah, I don't have too much here. I mean, I have Berrios projected better than Taillon, so like I'm going to get to him either way. I think that a lot similar to Kyle Muller, like 5 to 10% of Berrios seems about right. I don't really need a ton here going up against the Yankees. So do you want to get to bats in this one? Jays 17th in ownership. Yankees pulling a little bit more, but it's pretty much just Judge. What do you like for offense?
Yeah, I mean, I like both sides just because they're not getting much ownership and they are really good offensively against average-ish pitchers. Berrios has had more issues with left-handed power than right-handed power this year, but still, 163 expected ISO to righties, 228 to lefties. Most of the right-handed power for the Yankees is from the right side, but Rizzo looks good. Oswaldo Cabrera hitting 6th at 2,800 looks good. And then obviously, Judge, Torres, Donaldson, Stanton still look fine as well. On the other side, Taillon not as home run prone as Berrios, but still a 162 expected ISO to righties, 184 to lefties. A lot of right-handed power here, but extremely good right-handed power. So still on the same page that I was this morning. I think they're very similar offenses in that they're not the most likely to succeed, but they do have so much talent at low ownership that they're appealing in tournaments. I would lean towards the Yankees just because I don't think Berrios is as good at this point as Taillon.
I'm leaning towards the Blue Jays. They are one of my higher owned stacks at this point at no ownership. I had the Blue Jays slightly ahead of the Yankees in terms of top stack odds as well. So I'm also looking at a 4.5% chance to be top stack instead of the 3.3 that we were showing. Either way, I'd like to get a bit of this game in general, and I am much more exposed to the hitters than I was the pitchers. I don't have any Taillon, and I have 10% Berrios.
Yeah, I would expect to be getting into more of the hitters too.
Like 19% Alejandro Kirk right now. Love it. At 2.5% ownership. Go Jays, as per usual. Mets and Marlins, 4.1 run implied total for the Mets, 2.9 for the Marlins. Carlos Carrasco and Pablo Lopez. Carrasco, 23% owned at 9,300. Pablo Lopez on the opposite side here, 8,600 and unowned. Let's start with Carrasco. How do you feel about that ownership number? Feels just a hair high to me. I am light on Carrasco at this current time. I'm curious where you end up.
I think it's fine. He's not getting that much more ownership now than Lance Lynn. The matchup's certainly better going up against Miami, one of the worst offenses in baseball. Plenty of strikeouts there. We have him as the second highest projected pitcher on the slate, nearly a full point ahead of Lance Lynn, only trailing Robbie Ray. I think that is very reasonable. I don't really have any issues with Carrasco's ownership.
Yeah, like it makes a lot of sense to me. We'll talk a little bit about Lance Lynn and Blake Snell in the future, two guys that are getting a little bit less ownership than Carrasco. Can you justify Lopez on the opposite side?
I just got confused because Mark Langford's throwing out more ridiculous takes. What did you ask?
Pablo
Lopez on the other side. Really difficult to get there. Just a really tough matchup against the Mets. And then his price tag on this particular slate just doesn't really stand out, even though he's good. But like on this slate, you have Logan Webb for so much less in a good spot. You have Sandoval in a good spot for a lot less. You have German Marquez, who's like $3,000 less expensive. It just becomes really difficult to want to get to Lopez, I think, in such a tough spot against the Mets. You also now have Luis Garcia in that price range too. So good pitcher, 23.5% strikeout percentage, 3.6 xFIP, but not someone I expect to get to.
Yeah, same boat here. Speaking of things that I don't expect to get to, bats in this game at all. I don't have the Mets. I don't have the Marlins. Is there any justification for you for either one of these teams?
Not really. Carrasco has had some issues with left-handed power this year. 193 expected ISO against lefties. So JJ Bleday at 2,600 looks pretty good, but it's a 12-game slate. You can find plenty of outfielders that look pretty good. On the other side for the Mets, it would just simply be that they're a good offense. They're not getting much ownership. I do think Pablo Lopez is good, but these guys are certainly capable of doing damage against pretty much anybody. They're projected for less than 1% ownership. Lopez this year, 152 expected ISO to lefties, 138 to righties. One thing that does stand out is he has only struck out 18% of lefties, and you have a very left-handed heavy lineup here. 6 lefties. The only righties are Alonso, Kana, and McCann. So they're likely to be putting the ball in play, but still just tough for me to think that I'm prioritizing the Mets.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't have much else to mention here. I think we're good. Reran the Braves, by the way. I'm getting a little bit less now that I don't have that same lineup that I had in here before, but still, they look like a really, really good stack. That's not how you spell McEnroe, but sure. Anything else here?
Just the fact that you just named back-to-back male tennis players kind of means it's not either of them, most likely.
Yeah. I mean, John McEnroe is so far behind so many different tennis players. It's insane.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about tennis other than both of those guys are behind current players.
They're also behind a gentleman named Pete Sampras.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about schedule for the rest of the day. This one's simple, guys. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. They'll go from 6 until 7 o'clock, taking you all the way up until lock. It's that easy. Plus, we've got some free content for you. Our MLB Top Stacks tool is free, along with our PGA ownership, because PGA is here. Sanderson Farms, I believe, this week. So you got a pretty real, actual PGA event, unlike the MMA event that's happening this Saturday, which is closed to fans and media, I believe.
Is it still like 6 fights or whatever?
No, they've added a bunch of fights to fill out the fight card, but it's not exactly like a murderer's row of good.
I kind of assumed that when they closed it to the public.
Yeah. There's a lot of real bad on here. Should be a real blast. Either way,
those are some of my favorite DFS cards.
Gives me something to do on a Saturday, that's for sure.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about it and completely disagree, but they're some of my favorite cards to watch too, is when you have lower level fighters that just are not going to be able to defend themselves, and it's actually exciting as opposed to like good technical fights that are cool but also less entertaining.
Yeah, we're never going to agree on this one, but It depends where I'm watching that kind of fight too. Like if I'm at home just watching the UFC card, then I want the high level shit. If like we're gonna be at a bar or like at the event, then give me the just complete hilarity of like people just going ham on
See,
each other.
I'm the opposite, I think. Like if I'm just sitting around watching, I want it to like actually entertain me. If I'm like at the event and I can be like, oh, I was at, whatever really cool high level fight, like that is cool to me. But if I'm just sitting around, like I don't want to watch Izzy defend himself for 5 rounds.
Oh, see, like we're looking at it the opposite way then, because to me, I want to watch those intricacies. But if I'm in it with a huge group, then like the group of people is probably going to, people with your thought process are going to piss me off when the fight is actually good.
Yeah.
So
And
I need to
like,
watch a
Izzy,
good technical fight.
Izzy was a bad example because I actually do like watching Izzy. He was just the first one that came to mind where it was just like this isn't going to be a banger. It's going to be him just picking someone apart.
Exactly. See, like I love a good keep somebody at bay with a jab for 5 rounds until their face explodes. Like that's my favorite shit.
Sandhagen.
George St. Pierre to Josh Koscheck is probably the best example that I ever saw because you could just watch Josh Koscheck's face continually swell up through it. And then Koscheck was never the same. St. Pierre broke his orbital and then just boxed his face off for 25 minutes. Fantastic.
Did you, you didn't see the Sandhagen fight 2 weeks ago, did you? Weren't you doing something?
No, I saw it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was just the first one that came to mind. His eye just continually.
Yeah. No, I missed the card before that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the one I missed too, I think.
Unrelated contender series tonight. Bo Nickel is back. He should win a fight in 10 seconds and finally end this facade of being
Dana White's
the
gonna be like, all right, just need
contender
to see
series.
you do it one more time.
Yeah. Yeah, like just for everybody that doesn't understand, he's already got a contract. Red Sox and Orioles, 4.7 run implied total for the Red Sox, 4.3 for the Orioles. Michael Wacha and Kyle Bradish. Wacha unowned, Bradish unowned. Any justification for either one of the pitchers? I like Wacha a little bit more than Bradish. I think they're kind of similar given their prices.
Yeah, I think they're kind of similar as far as like the type of play they are. They're both projected for 1% ownership. Neither one should be any sort of a priority on this slate given the number of just underpriced guys that you can get to. They both have relatively difficult matchups, Bradish against the Red Sox and Wacha against the Orioles, but they are decent enough pitchers too. Bradish a 22% strikeout percentage, 3.9 xFIP this year. Wacha 20.3% strikeout percentage, 3.98 xFIP. They're both guys where like it shouldn't be surprising if they give you a good start, but they're also just sort of down the pecking order on pitchers on this slate. Not really through any fault of their own, more so just through the fault of terrible pricing on pitching.
Yeah, I got to like 7% Wacha. That's probably the extent of what we're going to be able to get here. 4 minutes ago, we got an ownership update. So just in case you wanted to grab everything fresh, it does appear to be in.
Cool.
So I'm going to do that quickly just to make sure that I have the most recent stuff when I'm quoting top stacks and top pitchers and everything now, because it should be all correct.
Yeah, we have Garcia in there now.
Bingo. That's what I like to hear. Makes it easier. Well, that's not where that gets pasted. Let's try this again. There we go. Now that's where that gets pasted. Okay, well, then let's talk about bats in this one. It is your Orioles. I'll let you start there. They are second in top stack, fourth in value, and fifth in ownership. Are you getting to your Orioles? Because I think they look pretty good.
I think they look decent. I think Wacha, again, just kind of a middle-of-the-road pitcher, but the Orioles are just always nice to get to. It's sort of for the same reasons that I like getting to Kansas City, but they're better than Kansas City. But you have Adley Rutschman as a reasonably priced catcher, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. You have Gunnar Henderson hitting fifth with third base shortstop eligibility at a cheap price tag. Ramon Urias is back in the lineup, second base and third base eligible at $3K. So you have two MPE guys at pretty weak positions hitting 5 and 6. You have one of the best hitting catchers in baseball hitting second. And then, you have two outfielders and a first baseman. But you and I talked about it this morning. Not only does that give you flexibility, the MPE there give you flexibility, but the fact that you have a good catcher and then, third base, shortstop options in Henderson and Urias, using them in your stack, you're getting some of the best hitters at those positions, and it's going to allow you to use one-offs or mini stacks at positions where it's really easy to find good hitters, as opposed to a lot of stacks where it's like, oh, well, they have a terrible catcher and a terrible shortstop. So now I need to, one-off or two-man, a catcher, shortstop combo from somewhere else. And it's just harder to find guys at those positions that are good. So it just makes them look a little bit better than they already would. So I do like Baltimore. Right now we have them projected as the second highest top stack percentage at 7.7%. That's a little surprising to me, but also, I get it. 9% ownership projection seems reasonable. They're a team that I typically am a little bit higher on than our top stacks tool because of the way that I do mine and the fact that it does bump them for MPE and how easy they are to get to. So I expect that I'll once again be getting to the Orioles.
Yeah, I have the Red Sox slightly ahead of the Orioles in terms of top stack odds here, but it's still both pretty close. I'm getting to Baltimore, 9% in the aggregate. I'm also getting to Boston, 7% in the aggregate. They're also getting ownership, 10% owned. That's fourth. They're fifth in top stack. Seems like the public's just getting to both sides of this one from an offense perspective, but nothing too crazy, and I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, so do I. I think Bradish is somebody that's really interesting to pay attention to going forward. He's been throwing his breaking stuff more recently. He's also been pitching really well recently. Probably some sort of connection there. But for the season, he's been really good at limiting power and production to lefties. He hasn't been as good against righties. If he's able to keep throwing that slider more, you're probably going to see righties have more trouble with him. That's just typically the direction that things go. But I do think that this is a really high upside spot for the Red Sox based on what we've seen from Bradish so far this year, because he has allowed a 177 expected ISO, 185 actual ISO to righties. And now you're getting him in Fenway Park instead of Camden Yards, where it plays up right-handed power instead of killing it. So if you look at like the entire body of work this year for Bradish, it's a really high upside spot, especially for the right-handed power in the Red Sox lineup. And then, of course, Devers is just good enough that it doesn't matter, just in case this is still 2,100 for God knows what reason. So it looks like a really good spot. The only sort of caveat is I do think Bradish has made some improvements. I do think he's likely to be better going forward than he has been to this point.
Okay. Do you like, I don't know if you said it, apologies. Do you prefer the Red Sox side of this one or the Orioles side of it?
I think they're comparable. I think I lean towards the Orioles. I like the positional aspect of it, although, Bogarts obviously is a good high upside shortstop as well. But I like the MPE and positional aspect of the Orioles a little bit better.
Okay, that works. I don't have much of a stand either direction. Like, I think the Red Sox are slightly better from a top stack perspective. I also think it's a lot easier to roster the Orioles, which probably offsets that. So I end up getting a pretty equal amount of both. 6% 5-man stacks to the Red Sox, 7% to the Orioles.
Massive NBA trade.
Really?
Oklahoma City sending Vic Krejci to Atlanta for Mo Harkless in a second.
I just did Atlanta's depth chart today with Mo Harkless, these sons of bitches. Interesting. Okay. I don't have anything to add there.
There is nothing that should be added there.
Mo Harkless is guaranteed this year too, I think. So I don't really know the point of that deal.
The second round pick, I guess.
Just weird.
I mean,
weird deal.
I don't know why they wouldn't just rather keep Krejci, but
I mean, it's possible that the Hawks just wanted to get off of Mo Harkless's salary and that they're going to cut Vic Krejci here. Krejci's contract is non-guaranteed.
Yeah, no, I meant for OKC. Like, I guess they're just assuming that whatever second round pick is going to be more appealing to them than Krejci.
Yeah, and then maybe you could flip Mo Harkless to a contender for another second later during the year because they don't give a shit. Yeah, I would not be surprised if Vic Krejci is not on the Hawks if they want to just simply shed that salary. Because Harkless was due to make, this is right in my wheelhouse, not that anybody gives a shit, $4.5 million. That's pretty big if you're going to be a tax team, which the Hawks are.
I definitely thought this was just a throwaway joke when I mentioned that Krejci was traded for Harkless. I did not know that you were going to actually care.
Dude, I care about every single transactional piece of the NBA.
Yeah.
It's like the only thing I care about in life. And my wife, if you're listening. Minnesota Twins, Chicago White Sox, 3.2 run implied total for the Twins, 3.5 for the White Sox. Bailey Ober and Lance Lynn, 5% ownership going to Ober at 6,700, 19% ownership going to Lynn at 9,500. And I think that he might even be like slightly under-owned as well. I don't love the spot against the Twins, but just the way that ownership is at the top, I like Lynn quite a bit here. I have him as my second highest projected pitcher on the slate. And at 9,500, I think that kind of works.
Yeah, we have him third behind Carrasco, but same ballpark, same general idea. The ownership has come up a bit since this morning. I think it's more or less where it should be. Lower top two pitcher percentage than Carrasco, slightly more expensive, also slightly lower owned. I think that kind of just comes out in the wash, and they look pretty comparable. The matchup against Minnesota is not very good, but Lynn is 25.2% strikeout percentage, 3.37 xFIP. The lineup the Twins are running out is slightly lefty heavy, 5 lefties, 4 righties. He doesn't have the same strikeout percentage against lefties that he does righties, only striking out 20. That's not him. Only striking out 20.9% of lefties compared to 31% of righties. But still, I think just kind of a neutral matchup for him, and he looks good enough.
That did get the Hawks out of the tax, by the way. So just in case anybody that cares. Bailey Ober seems just like not necessary.
Yeah, like if he lands in a lineup here or there at low ownership at 5%, that's fine. He's got decent strikeout stuff. Hasn't pitched a lot in the majors this year because of injury, but going back to last year, a 26.5% strikeout percentage against righties, 20.4% against lefties. You're getting a pretty balanced Chicago lineup. 1, 2, 3, actually 6 righties in there. So slightly, righty heavy, which plays into Ober's strikeout strengths. But he's another one where I think he would look a lot better on this slate if Logan Webb and Patrick Sandoval were priced where they should be priced.
Yeah, we're also going to have a conversation about Logan Webb's ownership in the near future. So get ready for, and by near future, I mean in the final thing we do on this one, but it's not right.
That can't be right.
Nope. Totally agree. Let's talk bats. And I think it's a pretty quick discussion. Twins are 17th in ownership, 23rd in top stack. White Sox are even lower in ownership, basically the same in top stack. Are the White Sox like a slightly under-owned team today? Yeah, probably. Does it matter? I don't know. I don't think they're all that fun to roster either. Do you get to either piece of this?
I think the White Sox are sort of interesting just because of the power issues that Ober has had in his career. 213 expected ISO to righties, 199 to lefties. But there are also just a lot of offenses on this slate. So I think they're going a little bit under-owned, but I also don't really think they're a priority.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't really get to either side of this one. The public really isn't. So I don't have too much to say here. So we'll go to Cubs and Phillies. 3-run implied total for the Cubs, 3.8 for the Phillies. Marcus Stroman and Zach Wheeler. No ownership going to Stroman. We've got Wheeler in at basically no ownership, 10,100. We talked a little bit about Wheeler earlier today. Did you see anything new with any sort of thoughts as to how deep he's going to go into this game?
No. I do so back to your other comment. I do think Webb's ownership might actually be right. But okay. For Wheeler, I haven't seen anything official. I'm expecting 75-ish pitches for him.
Do you get to him? So now we don't have McCullers on the slate. So has that changed anything for you? Does this open up Wheeler at all?
I think it's still difficult to get there. I mean, it's nice that he is not getting any ownership and he does have a decent strikeout matchup against the Cubs, but with how strong the mid-range of pitching is, and then, McCullers is gone, but now you have an $8,100 Garcia. It's not like, McCullers was replaced with a pitcher that you're not going to roster. So I think it just ends up being difficult to want to get to Wheeler with the assumption that he's not going to go very deep into the game.
Okay. Then I assume you don't have any interest really in Stroman. Do you have interest in either offense?
No, I think this is overall just one of the least appealing games.
All righty. Well, then, this should be pretty easy to do. I think that was game number 6. It was. Let's go ahead and talk about the presenting sponsor of this show. We're going back to Prize Picks, everybody. They are the sponsor. If you click the link in the description of this video, head on over to Prize Picks, make a deposit. You can get up to $100 on that deposit. You don't need Fantasy Cruncher. Not that we don't love it. Not necessary for Prize Picks here. You're picking player props, over-unders. You can do it across a boatload of sports. League of Legends, MMA, college football, soccer, NFL, MLB. All of this stuff is out there right now. You can get Aaron Judge as over a half base for the game right now. If you want to add that in, should make it a little bit easier to get up to 5 correct predictions. If you do that on one card, you'll get up to 10x your entry fee. Seems like a pretty good deal. I hit Adam with a couple pitcher fantasy scores from earlier today. I'm going to give him a couple more on that in that realm, but guys that we didn't talk about. Let's go to Carlos Carrasco, over under 35.5.
I was just updating projections. We have him at 35.2, so neither.
I got him at 32, so I would be a slight lean to the under. Now we're going to take it over to the hitters, which I think is just as interesting. We're going to DraftKings scoring for that one. Who would be a fun guy? Let's see. Besides Kawhi Leonard, where's Baltimore? Maybe I can get you some Orioles. Are there any Baltimore guys? Okay, so I'll give you Cedric Mullins, over under 6.5.
Over.
I got that by a mile over.
I'll say we have a 9.6.
And then Adley Rutschman, over under 6.5.
Over. Not by as much, but over.
Same. And then since we're already on that game, I'll hit one more from the Boston side. That's going to be, we'll go Rafael Devers, over under 8 fantasy points.
Probably over. Yeah, over.
Same here. We're on the same page here. So that's where we're at for Prize Picks, everybody. Please just click that link in the description. Head on over. Make it easy on yourself. Take that extra money, up to $100 on your first deposit. Now, Brewers and Cardinals. 4.2 run implied total for the Brewers. 4.3 for the Cardinals. Adrian Hauser and Miles Michaelis. Unowned Hauser right now. Basically unowned Michaelis. Do you want to get to any sort of amount of Michaelis given the sort of good strikeout matchup against the Brewers?
I think he's kind of just like Waka for me. Probably not going to get to much. If you're playing the Braves or some other popular offense, maybe he fits into those lineups. But 3% ownership to him, I think, makes sense. It's just hard to prioritize him on this slate.
Yeah, I got to like 3%, same as the public. It's just not really a spot that I'm looking to dig into. I am, however, getting the bats in this one, and that's on both sides. Cardinals are 4th in top stack, 7th in ownership. Brewers are 10th in top stack, 15th in ownership. I think both teams might be a little undervalued. It's certainly a great park for power. Do you like bats in this one?
Yeah, I like the park, and I like the lack of ownership coming in. Hauser's done a good job limiting power this year, but it's still a tough matchup against the Cardinals. They're a good offense, 124 expected ISO to righties, 182 to lefties, but just doesn't strike guys out. Overall this year, he has only a 14.8% strikeout percentage as a starter with a 4.62 xFIP. And the Cardinals just give you a lot of power. There's also some savings in this lineup. Donovan and Nootbaar at the top are cheap. Goldschmidt and Arenado are expensive, but their prices have come down from where they were not that long ago. Dickerson and Pujols are cheap. Carlson's reasonably priced. So I think it's a pretty easy team to get to as well. And then on the other side, Michaelis, kind of similar in that he's not somebody I'd like to pick on. I think he's also just a better real life pitcher than Hauser, but there is plenty of power in this lineup. The one thing that makes me like the Cardinals more than the Brewers, though, is the pricing. With the Brewers, looking at the top 4 guys in that lineup, Yelich, Adames, Tellez, Renfroe, they're all 4,600 plus. Whereas with the Cardinals, you just have to worry about Goldschmidt and Arenado.
Most exposed guy that I have here is Corey Dickerson, but I'm not too far behind on Arenado and Goldschmidt. I have 11% of the Cardinals, 8% of the Brewers. I'm just loaded up on bats. For a game that has like 6.5% aggregate ownership, I'm like 2.5 times that. So 3 cheers to all the offense that pops up. I kind of have this entire game outside of, let's see, I have very little Keston Hiura and Dylan Carlson.
4 strikeouts?
I don't mind if I can get 3 strikeouts and a dong. That's fine.
Yeah.
Guys, 560 viewers in here, 98 likes, not enough. Hit that thumbs up if you can. Let's run that like number up a little bit more. Anything else you want to touch on here between the Brewers and Cardinals?
Nope.
Astros and Diamondbacks. 4.8 run implied total for the Stros, 3.4 for the Diamondbacks. Luis Garcia now on the bump for the Astros. Lance McCullers got scratched earlier today. Zach Davies is going for Arizona. Zach Davies unowned in this spot against Houston. Garcia, 8,100 now, so a very different price point than we were getting for Lance McCullers. Is Garcia a better pitcher than McCullers?
No.
Is it close?
Sort of.
Feels closer than $2,400 or whatever it was. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think McCullers is probably like a, mid 9Ks pitcher.
Okay. Garcia, 18% owned. That's about where I have him as well. The spot is fine. I'd be happy to get to him. I think he's just sort of like underwhelming at 8,100.
Yeah, I mean,
or like he's whelming at 8,100.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with him is that like it's difficult to expect him to go really deep into the game. You know, I expect him to throw 85 to 90 pitches, but at 8,100, that's perfectly fine. The Diamondbacks don't strike out a ton. They've got close to an average lineup, but I think 8,100 is just a little bit cheap on Garcia. 24.5% strikeout percentage is slightly higher than Carrasco. 3.88 xFIP is solid. It's just, I think he should probably be closer to 9K, and just looks a little bit underpriced here. Also, even though he was the replacement for McCullers, he's not on short rest or anything. His most recent start was on the 19th, so nothing really to worry about there.
Evidently, Sean B is playing Caprillion because he's too cheap, so that'll be a fun one to get to.
I love comments where it's just like you're ignoring everything else about the slate. Like, I agree Caprillion's too cheap, in the sense that he's a little bit underpriced, but like there's actual good pitchers that are way too cheap today.
Yeah, Herman Marquez is $200 more expensive than him. It's weird stance. Anyway, anything for Zach Davies?
No.
All right. Well, let's talk Astros.
Yes, as far as Steve Miner is confused. Yeah, the spot's fine. Minute Maid's not a good park for hitters. Garcia has allowed a 304 expected WOBA and a 169 expected ISO to lefties this year. 23% strikeout percentage. It's just an average-ish spot.
Yep. Yes, it is. Third in top stack for the Astros. Second in ownership. This is the team getting a ton of ownership here, and I don't have all that much. They were third in my top stack as well. I don't disagree with any of it. I just think they're pulling a bit too much ownership.
That combined with the salaries makes it tough for me. And it's not that I think the salaries are like higher than they should be for the players on this team. It's just that it becomes difficult to, stack them all together when you have the top five hitters at 5,300, 4,200, 58, 46, and 4,800. They're all good, but that's just a lot of salary. I mean, you do have a pretty strong mid-range today, so it's certainly doable. But I think the salary combined with the ownership just makes them a little bit more difficult to get to. I do, as usual, like Mancini as a high upside tournament play at 3,300 MPE in Houston. Park just caters to where he hits fly balls. And
to be fair, like Altuve, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker, these guys getting 10 to 15% ownership or whatever, it's right. Like I don't disagree. Those guys deserve the ownership that they're getting. They're great positionally. Getting Altuve at second, getting Bregman at third, even if you want to add Jeremy Pena, who's pulling in some ownership here, getting another shortstop, like the whole stack makes sense.
It's one of those spots where like if they were getting less ownership, and it's the same thing that I was just saying about the salary, if they were less expensive, it would just be like, wow, they're underpriced. I'm not saying that like they're priced wrong, and I don't think the ownership is like wrong either, but it's just like, all right, if the field's already there are spots that I'm going to get to that are lower owned.
Okay. Yeah. I think we're on the same page. I actually have, and I don't like this, slightly more of the Diamondbacks than I have of the Astros.
I think that's reasonable just from a ownership salary perspective.
The problem is I don't like the lineup.
I do like the lineup. Other than what we talked about this morning with Carroll, Varsho, and McCarthy all being outfielders.
Yeah, that's sort of my piece here. Just not a lot of flexibility in the first five, but
yeah, I do like that you have MPE on Pavin Smith and Josh Rojas.
Agreed.
I like that Marte's price tag has come down below 4K. I mean, Christian Walker's at 4K. Like the only expensive player in this lineup is Rojas.
Are any of these Astros guys popping up for you from a cash perspective? Have you taken a look at that?
I haven't.
I'm going to do that right now.
I would think Alvarez is fine.
Let me disable stacks and run that quickly. We're at the midway point here. Got 600 people in here. Good show. Good show. Yo, I'm 24 minutes behind. I forgot Pete Sampras existed. Yeah, I mean, talk about a guy who just like it ended and then it kind of just ended. I mean, I assume he's just out there living his best life.
Probably.
I hope that he is, at least.
So just running stuff right now with the Stokastic projections. Kyle Tucker is showing up the most from Houston, followed by Altuve. They're both in the top projected lineup. Then you're getting a little bit of Pena, a little bit of Alvarez.
I'm not getting anything from Houston, which doesn't surprise me. It's probably part of the reason that I'm not really getting them in GPPs either. A bunch of Angels, Braves making a lot of headway at the top. Rutschman actually in basically everything as the catcher.
Yeah. Rutschman's the highest. Actually, just in case, this is the highest owned hitter using the Stokastic projections, followed by Rutschman.
All right. Anything else we should touch on here? Astros or Diamondbacks?
Just, I guess, to reiterate it on Arizona, because we kind of mentioned it, but of the low probability teams, they're one of my favorites just because they do have a lot of left-handed power here, and they're pretty cheap. Corbin Carroll's a top hitting prospect. Dalton Varsho's good. Jake McCarthy's solid. Walker's got power. Smith is cheap and has some power. Marte has power for a second baseman. So I agree with you from like the positional aspect. It's a little bit tough, but from a just talent standpoint, I really like the lineup that the Diamondbacks put together.
Yeah, I like it for everything other than just like DFS flexibility. I think they're a completely solid team. Power profile looks solid. Like, I don't have anything negative to say. Angels and A's, 4.7 run implied total for the Angels, 3.4 for the A's. I believe the Angels have like the third best implied total on the day. Patrick Sandoval going for the Angels, 6,900, projected for 33% ownership. Maybe a tad high to me, but still just a misprice against the A's, who aren't very good. Then Caprillion on the opposite side at 5,500, unowned and probably should be. Let's start with Sandoval here. What do you want to do here because of the ownership, or do you just see it as like that's just the price you pay for him being 6,900?
Yeah, I think it's just what it is, especially because Logan Webb, there's legitimate concerns about how deep Logan Webb's going to go into the game at that price point. So it kind of just leaves you with Sandoval sitting there at 6,900. Good matchup against Oakland. You're going to have a lot of right-handed bats there, and it is a park upgrade for the A's. But Sandoval's limited righties to a 124 expected ISO, 24% strikeout percentage. Just a good pitcher that should be probably $1,500 more.
It's also not exactly a murderer's row of righties. Like,
no,
they may bat from the right-hand side, but there's not a lot of like overwhelming talent either. So there's that. I'm anxious to see what you're going to say about Logan Webb when we get there. Do you prefer, I'm going to go to you right now. I don't want to preempt your take, but do you prefer Sandoval or Webb from a GPP perspective?
Sandoval.
Okay. Then we will get there. What about Sean V's boy, James Caprillion, who's pulling absolutely no ownership in this spot?
Yeah, I'm good there.
Interesting. That's not a guy that we should talk about, or is he just simply the 17th best pitcher on today's slate?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much that. Like 5,500 for a starting pitcher is pretty much always underpriced, but there's just no real reason to get to him.
I completely agree. Like, I'd rather just pay another 600 for Kyle Bradish. He's unowned as well.
Yeah, agreed.
What I do want to do, though, is get some of the Angels bats, although I honestly can't figure out why it's happening. They are 6th in top stack. They are 3rd in ownership, but I'm getting there and more. Now, I'm happy to get to Trout. I'm happy to get to Ohtani, but I'm getting to the rest of the lineup as well. I love the park. That's probably the driving factor here that's still getting me there, even with the ownership. What do you want to do with the Angels?
I like the Angels here, too. Mentioned it this morning. Caprillion hasn't given up as much power as at least I would expect this year. But overall, he's just not been good. 171 expected ISO to righties, 156 to lefties, 5.28 xFIP, 16% strikeout percentage. We don't have an Angels lineup yet, but assuming it's their normal lineup, you have Trout and Ohtani, which is just always obviously two great pieces to get to. But then Rengifo is reasonably priced with MPE. Taylor Ward is reasonably priced. And you can just throw in somebody else, whether it's Matt Tice or Mickey Moniak or Mike Ford, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's also supposed to be in the mid-80s, it looks like, low to mid-80s in Anaheim. So ball should carry a bit better than normal.
Interesting. Wasn't part of my analysis, but makes me a little bit happier. I think they're just, outside of Trout and Ohtani, the stack price itself becomes really easy to get to. And I think that's just going to be what happens for me. Rengifo showed up in 75% of my cash crunch. Sandoval showed up in a bunch of mine, oddly enough. Maybe not oddly.
Yeah,
Mike
Sandoval's
Ford,
in 84% using the Stokastic projections.
Robbie Ray in 100% for me as well.
Same.
Mike Ford showing up a bunch. So I like this Angels team today. I didn't think that was going to be the case, but there's flexibility there, and they are free outside of the two guys that should absolutely have 6K price tags.
Yeah, and using the Stokastic projections, Rengifo showing up 19%, Trout showing up like 17%, Ohtani in a couple.
Sean V claims lock for 18 fantasy points for James Caprillion today. That's a take.
Yep.
That's a take. You're better off betting on all of that than doing it in DFS, but
yep,
we'll just skip that part, I guess. What about the A's bats here? They are our number one stack in top value percentage, 18th though in top stack percentage. They're not pulling any ownership. Can you justify any value here, particularly with Sandoval on the opposite side, just with that big ownership?
It's pretty difficult. I mean, if you were trying to justify it, it would be that it is a nice park upgrade for Oakland. You do have some decent right-handed bats. Like, we don't have that lineup yet, but if Langoliers is in there at 2,500, that's a good price. Sean Murphy at 4,200 is always an appealing catcher option. You have 2K Chad Pinder, 2K Dermis Garcia, who, both of those guys have some power. So there's that. But the thing for me is mostly that there's the pitching on this price is so cheap, or on this slate is so cheap, that I don't think you're getting quite as much by punting with the A's as you would on some other slates. So yeah, I think probably the best case I would make for the A's is, maybe if you're playing the Braves or the Astros, you mix in, a three-man of like Murphy, Pinder, Garcia or something, and use that as a way to, one, save some salary, and two, offset some ownership. But it doesn't strike me as the type of slate where I'm likely to just be five-man stacking the A's a bunch. And if I said it before, if I were going to a relatively low probability spot, I think I would rather get to the Diamondbacks, just because Carroll, Varsho, McCarthy, Walker, Smith, or Marte just seems wildly more appealing to me than Jonah Bride, Tony Kemp, Murphy, Pinder, Garcia.
I am getting to the Diamondbacks over the A's, so I like that take. So happy to move forward with it. Anything else you want to touch on in this game?
Nope.
All right, folks. Promo code is here. It is prime time. This offer will end on Thursday, so make sure you're getting in. If you're interested in the NFL, we can give you a little bit of a sneak peek to some of it. If you use the promo code PRIMETIME, you can get our Stokastic Plus NFL tools for showdown and single game slates only for $1 for a week. That's a pretty good deal. You see it on the screen right now. Lineup generator, projections, ownership, Discord, the lineup builder. Again, it expires on Thursday. But if you use this promo code, you don't get Fantasy Cruncher for this. It's an add-on. It's not included in this promo. But if you want to see what we have for showdown slates, for single game slates for the NFL, because you're going to hit three of them. You're going to get Thursday Night Football. You're going to get Sunday Night Football. You're going to get Monday Night Football. That's a pretty good deal for $1. Padres and Dodgers. We're going to have some time for questions at the end, so we'll get ready to open this one up. 3.91 implied total for the Padres, 3.9 for the Dodgers. Blake Snell and Tyler Anderson, pitchers here. Snell, 9,900, projected for 13% ownership. Tyler Anderson, 9,100, unowned. What do you think you're doing with Blake Snell in a matchup against the Dodgers?
I liked him more this morning when he was like 8% owned, but I still think it's kind of the same thought process. He has the best strikeout stuff on the slate, and it's not particularly close. 32.2% strikeout percentage, 3.15 xFIP. But it is a brutal matchup against the Dodgers. He is still getting some ownership now at like 13%. And the other thing is that while he's not overpriced, there are just pitchers you can get that are good at a cheaper price range, where I think it's going to be kind of difficult to get to him from a projection standpoint as well. So if you get to Snell in some tournaments, I certainly don't hate it. I think that there is massive upside for him, just given how good he is at getting strikeouts. But this is the kind of spot that really scares me for Snell against a Dodgers team that, one, is just really good, and two, most of their good hitters are difficult to strike out as well. They're guys that are able to work counts, able to drive up his pitch count, able to really make life miserable. I do know the last time I said this about Snell, I don't remember who he was facing, but he went out and just absolutely carved up whoever it was, which just reiterates that he's a really good strikeout pitcher. He's a really good pitcher overall. That's certainly well within what he can do here. But when you're talking about Blake Snell type matchups, this is about as scary as it gets.
Would you rather have Snell or Wheeler?
Snell.
Okay. Snell or Lynn?
Lynn. The ownership's close enough now. I think it's just Lynn.
Snell or Carrasco?
Carrasco.
Okay. Tyler Anderson, can we even remotely justify that today? It seems impossible. He might actually, Tyler Anderson might be the worst option today.
What'd you say?
I think Tyler Anderson might be the worst pitching option today.
From a DFS I think so, and it's not even like a knock on Tyler Anderson.
No.
It's just that the matchup isn't good, both in terms of strikeouts and it being a tough matchup. But he's $9,100 on a slate where, you know, a lot of pitchers are mispriced. So not only are you, rolling the dice and taking him against the Padres, but you're paying $9,100 for a guy that has struck out 18.4% of hitters with a 4.3 xFIP this year, when you can pay substantially less for like anybody, and they all have better strikeout stuff. Like 9,900 for Blake Snell, it's not a cheap price tag and it's a dangerous spot, but it's well warranted given his strikeout stuff. 9,100 for Anderson is like, if this were a 4-game slate and he were facing, the Marlins or something.
Right. Yeah. It's how can you play Tyler Anderson when you can play Patrick Sandoval, when you can play Barrios even at 6,300, like at probably comparable, if not higher projections.
Well, and it's like even just
saving thousands.
Looking at the pitchers around Anderson, in terms of strikeout percentage, German Marquez is $3,400 less expensive. Yeah. Miles Michaelis is less expensive and low, and not lower owned, but like same, similar low ownership, less expensive, actually has a higher strikeout percentage in a better strikeout matchup. Barrios, brutal matchup, but he even has better strikeout stuff than Anderson this year. I have a really hard time making any sort of a case for him.
Do you have a case for bats in this one? Dodgers 9th in top stack, 9th in ownership, Padres 16th and 18th. I'm happy to fill out with either one of these sides, but I'm not really getting too much offensively.
Yeah, it's just one of those where I like the idea of getting to either one at pretty low ownership, especially the Dodgers. Like I said, I think Snell is a very, very good pitcher, but the Dodgers just are the type of team where I think can give Snell fits. And they're obviously just really, really good, but they're also not cheap. They are facing one of the best pitchers on the slate. It's more likely that if the Dodgers go off, I'm just kind of kicking myself for not getting there than that I get to a lot of them.
Yeah, I kind of just wish Snell was getting a little bit more ownership. I think that would make the Dodgers more interesting just because of how volatile this output could be for Blake Snell. But I'm not really getting much. 3% of the Pods, 2% of the Dodgers. To me, they're mostly just filler.
Yeah.
Yeah, DFS King. No, we didn't release Eric. At least I hope that we didn't. Hopefully he sticks around for a while. It's really fun to work with him. But good try.
I proposed it. I was vetoed.
Yeah, there you go. Fair enough. Let's go Mariners and Rangers. 4.3 run implied total for the Mariners, 3 for the Rangers. Robbie Ray and Tyson Miller. Robbie Ray is 10,300, now the most expensive pitcher on today's slate. He is also the highest owned pitcher on today's slate, and he should be. To me, he's very clearly the best DFS option on the slate. Based on our top pitcher odds, is he slightly overowned? Maybe. But I think he deserves all of his ownership. I'm happy to get there. With how free so many other people are, it's really easy to just pay up for Robbie Ray.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the issue I'm having too. He's going a little bit overowned, but he's also got a 1 in 4 chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. And that's not, we mentioned it a lot. Also, you're not going to make the optimal lineup in MLB. If Robbie Ray is the 4th highest scoring pitcher, you're probably fine. So he's going a little bit overowned, but he also is the highest projected pitcher on the slate by more than 2 points. We have him at 21.5 DraftKings points. We have Carrasco second at 19.2. He looks good. Matchup's fine. Park is very, very good. It's one spot in your lineup. I'm not too concerned about the ownership.
All righty. So, any justification for the long man for the Rangers?
No, I did say this morning he's better than I realized, but no.
Okay. Well, then let's talk bats. Mariners are 6th in ownership, 12th in top stack, but a good value at 3rd. Do you see yourself getting to Seattle here?
I like the value aspect. I don't love the matchup. Tyson Miller does project pretty well and put up good numbers at AAA. I also think that the Mariners clearly are just a less appealing stack in terms of upside when they don't have Julio Rodriguez. But the value aspect is nice. JP Crawford leading off at shortstop at 3K looks like a good value. He's showing up in 68% of the top projected lineups using the Stokastic projections. So he's probably your cash shortstop. Cal Raleigh hitting 5th gives you a high upside catcher option, which is really nice. France and Haniger are reasonably priced. Suarez is reasonably priced. Jared Kelenic, 2,200, hasn't hit well this year, but is a former top prospect that may or may not put it together at some point. But he's only 2,200, so there is at least some underlying talent there. So I think the Mariners are okay, but getting 7% ownership, we have them with about a 4% chance of being the top stack, about a 10% chance of being the top value. So all in all, probably just ownership coming in about where it should be.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Anything for the Rangers against Ray? I don't really know how we can justify something like that.
Yeah, I don't really see it. 152 expected ISO to righties this year, but again, he is in Seattle where batted balls go to die, basically.
Yeah.
I don't see much I want to get to from the Rangers.
All righty. Well, then we can close out each individual game with Giants and Rockies. 4.3 run implied total for the Giants, 3.1 for the Rockies. Logan Webb and Herman Marquez. I'll start with the guy that's getting more ownership. That's Marquez, 5,700. He's 12% owned against the Giants. Obviously, a great park to pitch in if you're worried about power. What do you want to do here with Marquez at 5,700? I think he stands out as a really solid option. I just don't know if you need to go all the way down.
Yeah, I think that's why he's only getting 11.5% ownership, is that he's just not that necessary in a lot of builds, but he is very, very clearly underpriced. I mean, if you want to talk about James Caprillion being too cheap at 5,500, I don't really know how you're ignoring Herman Marquez at 5,700 outside of course. Overall this year, he has an 18.6% strikeout percentage, 4.06 xFIP. He's just a good enough pitcher that's getting a massive park upgrade here. I don't love the matchup against the Giants. Like, they're going to have a lot of left-handed bats against him, most likely. He's struck out 18.5% of lefties with a 173 expected ISO this year. It's not that I'm looking at this spot and saying, oh yeah, I really want Marquez against the Giants, but I don't really think there's any case to be made that he's not underpriced here.
And then we get to Logan Webb, 7,200 in this spot against the Rockies. 7% owned in our last ownership update. You think that's reasonable there?
So I think it might be a little bit low, but I don't think it's that low. Okay. I think there's very legitimate pitch count concerns on him.
Okay. What's bringing you to that?
So last start, he went 5 1/3. He was pulled after 66 pitches. On the one hand, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it because they let him go back out there for the 6th, and then they took him out after he gave up a hit. But on the other hand, they apparently had said that they're looking to manage his workload. He's still on a career high in innings. So I think there's a chance you're getting, 75, 80 pitches.
Okay.
Which still makes him playable, for sure. Like,
sure, yeah. The price tag saves it.
Right, too. Right. It's basically, to me, when we talked about it this morning, I was thinking Webb is, $1,000 to $1,500 underpriced here. Now I think he's more like correctly priced.
Ooh.
If maybe it's still a little bit underpriced.
Yeah. He's such a good real pitcher, and the Rockies are such absolute ass.
I almost think that works against him here. Not the Rockies part, but the when Logan Webb has good fantasy games, normally it's because he's efficient, he goes deep into the game, he piles up fantasy points that way.
Yeah.
If they're going to say, okay, cool, like you got through 5 or you got through 6, we don't care that you're at 65 or 70 pitches or whatever, like you're just done. That takes away some of the appeal. The flip side is, I don't know, maybe he throws harder or something, like, if he knows he's not going deeper in the game, maybe he has, empties the tank. But I think it's just a spot where he's still a little bit underpriced, probably. I think it certainly widens the gap between him and Sandoval for me, though.
Okay. Even with the ownership gap, like, do you think that gap is now warranted?
Yeah, just because I think Sandoval, the ceiling is something that Webb can't get to.
Okay. Probably can't get to, I guess.
Yeah, sure, probably. Like, there is some chance that I don't know.
He just pitches like a normal starter and goes 8 innings and cleans up. Yeah. Okay. It's a really tricky. That's a really interesting dichotomy. I like the idea of getting more Webb, but I would also be very unhappy if he got through 5 in like 65 pitches, gave up 1 hit, but also had 2 Ks. You know, the Rockies just beat the ball into the ground, and then all of a sudden he's just out anyway, and there's no mechanism to add anything to it. Because if he were just like ready to go, like a normal Logan Webb start, and he were 7% owned, he'd be my most exposed pitcher.
Yeah, for sure.
So that would be interesting.
Yeah, completely broken price tag if he's not limited. So with him being limited, I think it's just like closer to correct, probably still a little underpriced.
That's fair. Let's talk about Giants bats then. 8th in top stack, 10th in ownership. Do you like getting to a San Francisco stack? I'm just tired of this team.
Yeah, me too. Not really. You know, I mentioned Marquez not being great against lefties, but it's still a tough park to hit in. They are cheap, so there's that, but they don't really stand out to me. They're not getting, where are they? They're not getting much ownership, 3%, 2.5% projected ownership, 4.5% chance of being the top stack. I don't mind being overweight there, but I don't think they're a team that I'm just going to start jamming in. Yeah,
I have 7% of the Giants. That kind of works for me at 3%. Yeah, especially, you know, Marquez pulling a little bit of ownership. That's fine too for me. A little bit of more of a benefit. Any justification to the Rockies bats? Because I don't see it.
Nope.
Yeah. Max Video wants to know who's on the Mount Rushmore of DFS hosts. We could probably start right here.
I think we start with Lofty.
I mean, what do you mean by there's no start?
You just said start right here.
Yeah. Damn right. Do we need to go to the tape again? Number one viewership on High Stakes right here.
You weren't hosting though. Neil was hosting.
This guy. That's true. But I bring the eyeballs. Who created this YouTube channel? Right here. This guy.
Also
Damn
not
Skippy.
hosting. Web development or whatever.
I mean, I was hosting at that time too.
Yeah. Well,
hosting the first video that was ever placed on this channel.
Notice we took off once some people joined.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that we took off 6 months before that. Your mileage may vary. Alex brought everyone here, though. But Alex isn't a DFS host. We're putting him on the Mount Rushmore of DFS players, then yeah, he's on the Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore of DFS players. Condia, Max, Alex.
Probably Mock.
Yeah. I mean, do like the Burrito Bros go on there as like a co-champs?
Yeah, they're in consideration.
They have been around a bit. The first 3 are like gotta be it, right? Like
Condia, Max, Alex, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. Let's sum it all up here.
Eric Hafner was certainly very good for a while.
Yeah. EMAC, no whistles.
Yoda's a good one.
It is.
Whistles just hasn't done it long enough.
Right.
I mean, he's really, really good. But
yeah. He's working on it, but
yeah.
Jorge with the super chat. Who would you go more with as a main stack, St. Louis or Houston? That's St. Louis for me.
Yeah, probably St. Louis. Like I that's one of those weird questions. Like I like Houston more in that I think they should be higher owned. If they were going to be the same ownership, I would say Houston, but I think there's probably a big enough ownership gap that it's St. Louis.
Red Skittle says Mock definitely on the Mount Rushmore. I don't know if you could say definitely.
No, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure Red Skittles is the one that has come in here and just like kind of there's somebody that occasionally will pop up, and like anytime his name comes up, he'll just kind of, you know.
Red Skittles is good, peeps.
Yeah. No, I just there's somebody, maybe it wasn't him. There's somebody that like actually probably I don't think it was him the more I think about it, but like there was somebody that occasionally would just pop in and like talk about how good McLovin is.
Yeah, interesting. Marcos, are you trolling? You trolling from this morning? Is that what's happening here? All right, top stacks, Adam. Go for it.
Atlanta, Baltimore, either St. Louis or New York.
Top pitchers.
And we're back to 5 people being on Mount Rushmore.
Yep, that didn't take long.
Ray, Carrasco, Sandoval.
Anything else you want to add for this slate before we get out of here and turn it over to the MLB Live Before Lock crew?
Nope.
I agree with Greg. Every lake is a toilet. So you should be peeing the moment you get into it.
How did that come up? Like, I saw what he said, but like, what was the comment before?
No idea. But we'll let those comments go to the MLB Live Before Lock crew. So let's get ahead. We'll go ahead, get out of here. Prize Picks is the sponsor. Thank you for that. Stay right here on this stream. Hit the like button too. 730 plus people. It's a good crew for a Tuesday at the end of the baseball season. So thank you for being here. Good luck. Don't go anywhere. Live Before Lock coming up next.
happening, guys? It is time for the Stokastic MLB Live Before Lock. A lot of people wondering who is going to be on the show following Josh and Adam, who left like 5 minutes earlier. They're just like, hey, we're done doing this. We're leaving. Greg and Terry, you guys go on. So that's who it is. It's myself. It's Terry. We're sponsored by Prize Picks today. A lot of rumors about what's happened with Eric. There was some improprieties. He also did flush his phone down the toilet, so that's broken. We can't text him anymore. But Terry, what's going on? You and I here today. And maybe people want to speculate what happened to Eric, why he got suspended. We could speculate on that as well.
Yeah, I think that should be a topic of conversation throughout the show and in chat here. There's definitely, I mean, look, guy like that, there's a lot of different angles that could be coming from. But do we have confirmation on the toilet thing or is that just kind of like an excuse, a shady reason that we might not be able to hear back from him right now?
No. He so the actual thing is he dropped his phone in a lake. So yeah, there's no way to get in contact with him. No way at all. I did actually. Eric's in chat. Good. Let's guys, whatever you think it is that's caused Eric, because we know that Eric's had issues in the past, right? He had the time where he accidentally got undressed on camera and he had to get suspended for a week. He's suspended again. He hasn't done shows for a few days. But I have a story about Eric too. Would this be of interest to you, Terry?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be interesting to everybody in the chat. But maybe we should hold out for like 200 likes. We're only like 8 away. If we want to be silly about it. You want to smash that like. Greg will start telling the story because we know we'll get over that 200.
Yeah, good point, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll tell a little story here. So I made a trip out to LA to see Eric, right? Because I haven't seen him. He's been suspended. He had the issue with his phone. So I said, all right, Eric, I'm going to come out here and we'll meet up because, we'll have a big party. It's going to be really exciting. He goes, but just so you know, where I'm from, party's a little different. We go hard here. He goes, there's a little drinking, a little fighting, and a whole lot of fucking. And I was like, oh boy, that sounds like a party. What time should I come over? And he said, it doesn't matter. It's only going to be the two of us. So that's what's going on with Eric and his world over there. But guys, throw in some comments in the YouTube chat. Guess why did Eric get suspended? What did he do?
It sounds like you just told us what he might have done, but that's one hell of a party. It's definitely one way to go. It kind of reminds me of the beginning of this is the end with Seth Rogen, where he's got all the stuff laid out for his buddy when he gets to LA, but I don't remember him fucking him, which is kind of sends the night in a little bit of a different direction.
It's always good when you can throw in a little joke or something in the chat and you see all of a sudden the messages go, brrr, you just see them scrolling, people responding. It's good. It means we're doing our job. We've got a baseball slate to talk about as well, though. So let's start breaking down this baseball slate. And, if we look at the pitching options today, actually, I think this happened the last time we did a show together. Was it not the case that the last time we did a show, there was a whole bunch of ownership on Robbie Ray and nobody else? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I think that was one of ours in one of the recent ones we've done. Yeah, and it's definitely come up, a number of times through the season or similar type situations. But yeah, that's a key to tonight's slate, I think.
So we have for today, let's just start by talking about Robbie Ray. He is 43% projected owned on DK today. Over on FanDuel, 36% projected ownership. And past that, I'm not going to say there aren't guys that are popular as well. We got Patrick Sandoval. He's 33% owned on DK. But by and large part, Robbie Ray is the chalk that people are paying up for. What are you going to do with him at home against Texas?
Probably to no one out there's surprise, I'll have less of them than the field. I do think there are a number of good options on the board. A lot of guys in this similar kind of a mid-range with some strikeout upside that are just a little underpriced, a little bit under-owned. So there's a lot of spots I want to tuck some of that ownership into. He's 36% on FanDuel. If I'm in the 18 to 20 range like I'm normally targeting, I'm pretty happy with that, I think. 10-2 is a totally fair price over there. 10-3 on DK, 43% ownership over there. Again, totally fine. 27.8% strikeout rate, 3.52 xFIP for him on the season, 13.8% swinging strikes. He's got the issues that Robbie Ray always has, puts a few too many guys on base, but it's been tempered over the last couple of years in terms of the walks. He gives up the occasional long ball, 3.87% home run rate this season, nearly a 40% hard hit. So there are some contact concerns, but he's been very good the last 2 years. So if you just want to go there on blind faith with Robbie Ray and just walk along with the field, I have no issues with it. It's just not how I'm going to approach the tournament slate anyway. It's a lot of different directions to go.
Yeah, so here's how I approach Robbie Ray. First of all, cash games. We're both going to be in agreement here. I think FanDuel, DraftKings, he's in that lineup, right? Even on FanDuel, single pitcher site, Robbie Ray's the guy.
Yeah, I think so. I would be trying to find arguments for any of these other guys where I think he's just kind of clear cut right at the top of the board. So I would have no issues with that on cash.
Yeah. So for tournaments, here's the issue I have and why the first thing I did when I'm building my lineups is I took Robbie Ray, at least for my single entry lineup. I took him out of it. He wasn't in my single entry builds, the lineups I was considering. It's so much ownership for him. And he's a really high variance pitcher. And he was really good last year. And he hasn't been quite as good this year, which I think we all expected, right? Nobody thought we were going to get a repeat performance of the Robbie Ray Cy Young. He's still been better than he's been in previous years. but the variance is there. And generally, if Robbie Ray is going to be uber chalky, I want to be underweight to the field in tournaments. If he's going to be contrarian, which we've also seen him some starts this year, you want to be overweight to him because of the strikeout rate. Now, is that to say that I'm really confident he has a bad start today against the Rangers? No, but I just kind of want to manipulate ownership a little bit here. So I'm not going to be playing him in single entry. In large field tournaments, I'm going to be underweight to the field on him just because he's such a high variance pitcher. And the matchup doesn't even matter sometimes. Remember, he had that outing. Was it him who was against the A's? It was really popular and had a really, it was the matchup right against the Angels, right? 2 starts ago. He ends up going out against the Angels. He's really popular. He puts up 5 fantasy points. And the Angels have been a team that we've targeted a lot for DFS in the later portions of the season. He also had a start like that, I want to say, against Oakland a couple of months ago, maybe, where he was pretty mediocre, high ownership. But
the more recent of the two was like the most I've rostered Robbie Ray in the last 2 years. It just did not go well. So a little bit of a bad taste from that one as well. But I think it's fair to treat Robbie Ray almost like a Coors Field. Like when the public is there in great amounts like this, and there are other opportunities, just move off of them and get to other things, get to him in smaller degrees than the public. And like you said, it's not like we're saying he's not going to come through, but it's also not the best matchup in the world. Texas, I might not have updated this, so these might be 2-day-old numbers, but roughly the same. 21.6% strikeout rate against lefties this year is 12th in baseball. So dead in the middle of the league, kind of average, but they've been good for run creation, a 114 WRC plus, a 3.78% home run rate, a 183 team ISO for the active roster. So not the greatest matchup in the world. I wouldn't be totally shocked if they, put a couple runs on them.
Yeah. So, and for me, once again, it's just because of how high the ownership is. I think Robbie rightfully is the highest projected pitcher on the slate. But
I agree with that too. Yeah.
Tournaments, I'm going to be undercutting the field. We've got a couple questions to get to here. First, from Lucky in the Discord channel, which, by the way, if you guys want to know one of the many perks to the Stokastic Platinum membership, it's not only all the tools we have on the site that can help you build lineups. You also get access to Discord. You can ask us really important questions. So if you guys want to get access to the top stacks tool, top pitchers tool, and ownership projections, everything you need and more. And then also that's just for baseball. For football, we've got all that covered. NBA, we've also got a whole bunch of projections and all that. That's 3 weeks away from NBA season starting now. If you're signing up for the first time for a Stokastic Plus package, use the promo code MLB Live and get 50% off. But question we have in here from Lucky, he's just asking me, how was the party? It was okay. There wasn't not enough lube for my liking. Super chat from Eric Traub. Is Webb not safe for cash? Webb is definitely safe for cash. I think if you're looking at, and by the way, I'm not
assuming
sure
you're talking about DraftKings.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's asking about DraftKings. For FanDuel purposes, just play Robbie Ray in cash. He's going to be 60, 70% owned in FanDuel cash games.
Yeah, I would think.
When you consider, was he 36% owned right now in large field tournaments? FanDuel cash, he's going to be universally owned. You just play him there.
Yeah, and there's only a $600 difference on the FanDuel slate between those two pitchers. That's easy to pay for.
For DK purposes, I would rather play Patrick Sandoval against the Oakland A's. I think that would be the pitching combination to go to, Robbie Ray and Patrick Sandoval. But I love Logan Webb in tournaments today. I think he's going wildly underrepresented, and I just don't get it. So maybe you could offer some insight on this to me, Terry. But why is Logan Webb 9% owned on DK at 7,200 and on FanDuel? I get he's expensive on FanDuel at 9,600, but he's at home against the Rockies. How is he 0.5% owned? This is actually my favorite tournament pitcher on the entire slate.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. I've got him projecting very well. I've got a lot of guys just right in that, excuse me, right in the same area, just below like the Robbie Ray part of the board. So he's one of those guys. He's an upper tier pitcher on this slate for me, just on raw projection. I think there's a little bit of lingering concern maybe about the innings. Adam was talking about it as his innings limitation the last time out. He went out for the 6th inning and they yanked him after only, I think he said 60 some odd pitches. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me, but overall over the course of the season, he's been a sturdy, reliable type pitcher. 187 and a third, 20.3% strikeout rate, a 3.37 xFIP. He induces a 10.5% swinging strike rate. He keeps the ball in the yard very, very well. 1.43% home run rate, a 3.2 degree average launch angle, 5.6% barrel rate. So the ball's on the ground. He doesn't give up a ton of hard hit. He doesn't give up long balls. He had a better strikeout rate last year for sure, 26.5%. He was finding more swinging strikes. But I think Rockies against a righty on the road, it's something we just pound and pound and pound all the time. I think against this team, there's definite upside there. There are a number of lefties and switch hitters in the lineup that they're going to be rolling out there, but I just like this pitcher. I like the the price and the upside. So definitely for 7,200 and only 10% ownership, that is way too low for that price for this pitcher on DK. And then I think you're just paying a little bit of a tax to get nobody on him if you want to go there on FanDuel. So I like the spot for FanDuel tournaments quite a bit.
Yeah. And then just also kind of follow, because I was a little concerned, like what do we think that we're getting as an upper bound limit of Webb's pitch count? Because even in, 70 to 80 pitches, I do think that relative to his price, especially on DK and the matchup, there's still some upside there. But is there a reason to think that he could also even just get close to a full workload in this start?
Yeah, I haven't spotted anything that said he's definitely going to be like cut down and limited and they want to rest him or things like that. I think he's just going to come out here and give us probably that same 5 1/3, to a full 6 innings of a game. If he gets me to that complete game, or to the quality start on FanDuel, if he gets me to the complete game, I am walking to the bank. If he gets me to the quality start on FanDuel, just get me through 6 clean innings, find a few strikeouts against this team. I think we're sitting pretty at that ownership. Like, I don't think we need him to spike a massive upside game, pitch 8 innings or anything like that. Give me 6, give me a handful of strikeouts here and 6 clean innings. I think we're home.
Yeah. And by the way, for cash game purposes, that's the reason I wouldn't be playing Webb here, is that he was limited to 66 pitches in his last start. But I mean, still the start before that, he went out, he threw 90 pitches, 102 the start before. The one thing here when it comes to Webb is that the Giants are out of the playoff picture. So we've seen them kind of be cautious with Rodon at times down the stretch of the season. But when it comes to Logan Webb, if he's pitching well, I don't know that it's a guarantee they're going to pull him after 5 innings or anything like that. And also for people who are saying, well, he's on a pitch count. Well, for DraftKings specifically here, he's so far priced down that it kind of alleviates any concerns there would be about a pitch count, because he is $7,200 at very low ownership over on DraftKings. If Logan Webb had 0 pitch count concerns, what's his price in this matchup? The same price probably on FanDuel, right, Terry? Somewhere around 9,600, if not more expensive.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if I want to credit DraftKings for like spotting that he came out of a game early and lowering his price and thinking that he'd be on a pitch count today. It's probably they landed here by accident, but it does work out that way. So I don't want to give them credit for doing something correct with pricing. But I just agree. I think there's upside. Even if he does come out on a pitch count of like 75, I think there's upside at that DraftKings price. That would get concerning on FanDuel, where I do want to get to the quality start there. But I'm going through the news again. I looked earlier in the day. I'm not seeing anything from the team saying, hey, 75 pitches for Logan Webb, and then he's out of there. So as much as it is maybe a lingering concern, you don't sweat that. I think probably part of it is he's at 187 1/3. Like I said, his previous career high last year was 148 1/3. So you think young pitcher, don't necessarily want to push him all the way over 200 innings for the first time in his career, blah, 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 blah. But are 6 more innings going to really kill this kid at the end of the season? I don't think so. I don't think the Giants think so. So I think we're fine here.
Yeah, I'm on the same page, especially when we're just getting the ownership discount. It's worth rolling the dice with at this point in the season. Now, the other really popular,
and they have so many pitching prospects and stuff too. If they were really concerned about that, they would have just put them on the IL or something and brought up one of the kids and had them pitch the rest of the season. So I just don't see it.
So let's talk about the one other popular pitcher that we have picking up some ownership today, and then we'll start to talk about some of the more contrarian options. Although we did talk about Logan Webb, who I do like a lot as a contrarian play, but Patrick Sandoval, $6,900 on DraftKings, just an insane misprice. So he's the most popular value pitcher on this slate, and for good reason. 33% for him over on DK. FanDuel, Sandoval is also the second most popular pitcher, and that is at an $8,900 price tag. The ownership, I don't really find to be problematic on either site, though. FanDuel at $8,900, considering the matchup against Oakland. I'm cool with him at 13% ownership. And then on DK, the price is so egregious at $6,900 against the Oakland A's that I actually think the 33% ownership could reasonably be too low, if anything. I think he's a very safe option. I like the upside. Sandoval's been incredible this year. ERA in the low 3s, FIP also in the low 3s, strikeout rate 23%. So Sandoval, points per dollar, really strong pitching option. Where do you stand on Sandoval?
Yeah, on DK especially, if that ownership was 20 percentage points higher, I would not be sitting here saying it was a mistake at that price. Like, this is a team we have just been smashing against all season long. The A's are just a target for pitchers, and you can go to them a lot with like mediocre pitchers. And I think Sandoval is a much better pitcher than mediocre. 23.9% strikeout rate, a 3.66 xFIP on the season, a 1.36% home run rate, only allows a 33.9% hard hit this year. Last year, 35.4% hard hit. So he's reliably good at keeping the ball in the yard, not allowing a ton of power, finding his strikeouts. And in a matchup against this soft of a team, absolutely, that's a spot you can go to again and again at that price on DraftKings as your SP2. Just, I don't want to say like lock it in by any means on a baseball slate, but I think you can get aggressively over the field on that SP2 spot on DK at that price. 8,900 on FanDuel is perfectly fine for tournaments. I actually wish he was in a little bit lower of an ownership situation. Like, I wish he was ducking under 10. I'm just being piggish about that, though. He's projecting out great at 8,900 for me. So I'll be right around the field, probably 15, 18%, somewhere around there on the FanDuel slate, I think.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable with Sandoval. And, like I said, a little more expensive on FanDuel, but at the same time, too, getting the ownership discount. And still, I think he's a really strong pitching option considering the matchup and how well he's pitched as of lately. Do you know how long it's been since he's given up more than 2 earned runs in a start?
Since June 16th.
That was a wrong guess. So you weren't that far off, though. It was end of July since he last did it. So He's been really consistent for a really long time now. So Sandoval, definitely a value option that a lot of people are going to play, and I think very justified chalk that I'm okay with. But if you're paying up and you're going to be a little more contrarian at pitcher today, Terry, let's say we're trying to pivot off of Robbie Ray and still pay up for pitcher. We've got some guys up there. Zach Wheeler, I think we just write off because that's somebody who's expensive and has really restrictive pitch count that we're looking at. But Carlos Carrasco, Blake Snell, Lance Lynn, these are just some of the guys that we have to talk about on the high end. Who is your favorite pivot off of Robbie Ray if you're paying up for pitcher in tournaments?
For me, it's probably Carrasco again, going up against that Marlins lineup. I think there's enough upside there. He's getting 23% ownership share for that 9,300 price on the DK slate. He's pulling 13% on the FanDuel slate. So he's negatively leveraged, but I do think there's just a lot of upside there. That said, I've gotten burnt by him, I think, the last 3 times I've talked about him. So maybe there's a little hesitation for me. Looking around the board for a little bit of positive leverage, a little bit of upside at the lower ownership, you can take a chance with Blake Snell against the Dodgers. I'm not going to be doing it very much. I just don't trust the pitcher all that much in terms of his walk rate. I do think there's upside for strikeouts there, but not necessarily against this Dodgers team. They're just elite at not striking out, in addition to their just excellent offense, their excellent run creation skills. So that one concerns me a little bit. I think a spot that I'm going to go to that is again negatively leveraged, at least on DK at 81. Let's see where he is on FanDuel. FanDuel 91 is a good spot. 5.4% owned, positively leveraged by a fingernail. Luis Garcia going up against Arizona. I know the guys on the last show talked a little bit about him in terms of him being steadily mediocre or, an average-ish type of a pitcher. I think I like him a little bit better than the guys do. And yeah, there's a little concern about his innings, but I just think at no ownership, he's a reliable enough pitcher who does have strikeout upside, 24.5% over 145 and a third this year, 3.88 xFIP, 3.67% home run rate. So he can get got from time to time, but I'm not overly fearful of this Diamondbacks lineup. They're also kind of decidedly average here. So I think Garcia, especially on FanDuel where you're paying up to get to him, but you're getting an ownership discount, is very interesting for tournament play.
Do you have chat open right now?
Not in front of me, but now I do. Yeah. What are we looking for?
There's just something, I don't know what it is that's going on here, but there is, I know this is mostly my fault for getting stuff off the rails a little bit, but oh my God, whatever's going on here with this Shoe Nice character, it's really off the rails in chat here.
6 days later, they hacked my DoorDash and know where I live. I'm a TikTok comedian now. They're hunting me down. What is going on here?
Yeah, if we go any further with this, he's going to have to get muted. I very seldom like to mute people in chat, but this is just so far off the rails. But getting back to the pitchers and the high end guys, it's pretty interesting just from a standpoint of we got a lot of pitchers here that are similarly owned, right? Carlos Carrasco, Blake Snell, Lance Lynn. I view them all, or at least they're all projected for fairly similar ownership as far as DraftKings is concerned. Over on FanDuel, though, Carrasco is more popular at 12%. And I do think it's warranted. So I do find it kind of curious that on DK, We've got Carrasco projected for 21% ownership, whereas Lance Lynn is at 20% when Lynn is also more expensive. So I think FanDuel, the field has it right by getting to Carrasco more often. I think the field on DK should be a little bit higher on Carrasco and a little bit lower on somebody like Lance Lynn, who, while Lynn has been good in the second half of the season, and by the way, the Twins absolutely have been horrendous on offense lately, it's not as bad as the Marlins offense. And Carrasco's at home. He's got a good offense behind him, so he's fairly likely to pick up the win bonus there. So Carrasco is going to be my favorite pay up option if I'm looking to be contrarian off of Robbie Ray. So that's where I stand with him. And then we've talked about pitchers on pitch counts today. You know, Logan Webb came up. Zach Wheeler, somebody who I think we could write off. Wheeler making his way back.
Real quick, let's.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Were you going to dive into Wheeler here? I didn't want to cut off your intro if you are, because I just want to take a sec on Wheeler. I'm just thinking, like, does he need more than 75 pitches to deliver something somewhat relevant potentially for a tournament against Chicago?
At his price, I think he does, and especially because I don't think that it's just the 75 pitches. Like, if he's at 5, 6, and I think they're pulling him out. Like, I don't think there's a way they're letting him throw like into the 7th inning, especially because they want to get Syndergaard work. They want to get Syndergaard work, and he's the piggyback pitcher. So just because they want to get Syndergaard also work and stretch out for the playoffs and see what they have in him as a potential long reliever, I think that the price tag on Wheeler becomes just too much for me. 10K over on FanDuel, 10-1 on DK, especially on FanDuel. We generally need that win bonus and the quality start. He just might not get enough innings there. So that's where I'm at with him. Do you see it differently?
I was thinking more on the DK side of things, just for the upside of pitching against Chicago at 1.7% ownership for a guy of this caliber, 26.5% strikeout rate, 3.16x FIP. But we know Zach Wheeler is an excellent pitcher. So if he goes out and pitches 4 or 5 innings, finds half a dozen strikeouts here, it could be potentially playable against the slate. Like if Robbie Ray goes pop, now you're pitching against a bunch of mid-range pitchers with a decent start under his belt. I don't think I would do it on FanDuel, where you do want to grab the win, the quality start bonus, but which is nobody on him. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility for me. It would be a really low end play, a really low volume play in terms of how many shares I allocated to it. But I don't think it's totally off the board if we think he's getting 75, 80.
Yeah, but
I agree. There's a lot of reason to doubt that. Like,
yeah, for me, I'm just going to stay away because of the pitch count concerns, and the difference between, like I said, him and Logan Webb is number one. I think there's a chance that he's just going to throw more regular innings, and also particularly on DraftKings, he's so much less expensive than Wheeler that I kind of think it's okay. By the way, Shoe Nice just still going off crazies. Going if you want to go to a party, go at Eric Lindquist on Twitter. DM him. You're not going to be able to reach him on his phone, but he'll set you up with a fun party if you message him on Twitter. There's one other pitcher I want to ask you about what to make of, and that's Luis Garcia. Really favorable matchup at home against the Diamondbacks, but it's a weird situation, right? Because earlier in the day, Lance McCullers was the expected starter for the Astros, and McCullers gets scratched earlier in the day. Luis Garcia kind of gets inputted on late notice. So it's been 3-4 hours since we've known Luis Garcia is going to start. Do you think that has any impact on how the Astros are going to handle him and his pitch count today? Because he's typically a pitcher they don't really let work all that deep into games as is.
It's lingering in the back of my mind, but just based on the way that he's projecting for me, the way that he's going to be owned on that FanDuel slate, like I was talking about before, I just think there's enough upside that I probably want to be there. The last time he pitched was on the 21st, which is a full 6 days ago. So he's rested. It's not like there's any question about his rest. It's not like he's coming back on short rest here. So I don't really have any qualms about it. You could argue from a narrative sense, and I have no idea what Luis Garcia's pregame rituals and so on and so forth are, but some pitchers are weird, right? They need to get locked in and not talk to anybody and blah, 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 the day of their starts. I can't quantify any of that, so I'm not going to worry about any of that. For me, it's going to be a full go Luis Garcia. I'm not limiting him in any way. He projects out great for me, and I like the spot a lot for tournaments on FanDuel where I think he's under-owned at cost.
Yeah, I agree with you for this reason. It's what I was saying before when it comes to Luis Garcia. I'm just going to bring up his pitch count here. Is that generally when we're looking at him, and maybe they're like, hey, we don't want him to throw 7-8 innings because he was starting on late notice. That's not something he does normally anyway.
Right.
We're usually only getting mid-80s or so pitches out of Luis Garcia. Looking at his last handful of starts, I mean, he's only made it to 90 in one of his last 4 starts. He's thrown over 100 pitches twice the entire season. Looking at his innings pitched, we've gotten more than 6 out of him, I think 3 times the entire season. It's just not something he does. And it's just somebody who isn't really priced appropriately for the matchup because, how would the pricing algorithms have known that he was going to be the starter today? I know they generally try to price this stuff out, but sometimes it just doesn't end up being the case. But both sides, I think we have a reasonable price on Luis Garcia, $9,100 on FanDuel, $8,100 over on DK. He's not all that popular. I like the matchup against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I also like getting to Luis Garcia. As far as the mid-range play goes, I think he's my favorite guy today. If we're looking in that, like 8 to low 9K range, is Luis Garcia also your favorite guy for tournaments, or is it somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, for tournaments, we've got more ownership going to Patrick Sandoval. I think that spot is necessarily better. I think Sandoval's got more upside and he's at a lower price, 89 on FanDuel and obviously 69 on DK is just absurd. But yeah, I really like this spot for Luis Garcia. He projects out just as well as some of these other options that we've talked about, the Logan Webbs of the world, if I'm giving him equivalent innings. So I think I am going to be able to get there when he's only 5% owned on the FanDuel slate at that price. It allows you to buy some bats that go into Robbie Ray doesn't. It allows you to do some differentiated things. I like it. Carlos Carrasco, who we talked about, is 95. So, we're saying he's a cheaper option than that, maybe is cheating a little bit. I do like the Carrasco spot quite a bit. Very similar with like what I said about Sandoval. I think both those spots are better, but I think the public's going to be getting those a little bit more. So I like all three of them.
All right. So we've talked about some cheap punt options that we like on DraftKings where there are just some differently priced pitchers, right? Logan Webb's really cheap on DK. Patrick Sandoval is really cheap on DK. But Terry, are there any cheap pitchers that really stand out to you on the FanDuel slate? And let's say below 8,000, that would be the cutoff. Any pitchers below 8K that you think are being underrepresented by the field that you really want to be overweight to in tournaments?
Yeah, for the Braves, Kyle Muller, 6,000, 7.5% owned. People are sleeping on this kid. He's going up against the Nationals, which is already just a soft spot. This is a kid who had a 30% strikeout rate in AAA this year. He is a premium prospect, big left-handed kid. I really like the upside for him at 6,000. I think he threw over 100 pitches his last time out, so he's fully stretched out. Like there's no innings concerns here. I think against his Nationals team, he could put up a very, very strong start for us. 7.5% ownership is too low for for a $6,000 pitcher with that upside on FanDuel. I just don't know that we necessarily need the savings. So that's probably why fewer people are going there. Like you just don't need value pitchers like maybe you did once upon a time. But I think if you want to go there, if you want to play it that way and buy a bunch of expensive bats or leave a bunch of salary on the table, that's your guy. I think there's major upside. Are you seeing Muller the same way?
Based on his price and ownership, I could get behind it. Only 6K, like you said, over on FanDuel, not picking up a whole bunch of ownership. DK, he's a little more expensive at $7,400, but still based on the matchup, the limited ownership there. Did you see the start that, who was the Brave? It's slipping my mind. The starter for the Braves. Oh, Bryce Elder pitched for the Braves yesterday.
Oh, I missed baseball yesterday. FanDuel ran a tournament with like 6,000 spots in it, and I woke up too late to enter it. So I just sat out baseball yesterday.
He did nothing but basically throw fastballs down the middle, and it was ground out after ground out after ground. This Washington Nationals offense is terrible. So Elder ended up completing through the complete game shutout, was the highest scoring pitcher on the DK and the FanDuel slate by a mile yesterday.
I am glad I missed baseball yesterday.
Yeah, well, actually, the slate yesterday was a total disaster because then there was 2 games that were rain delay. It was only a 4-game slate, and 2 of them, which did not have rain in the forecast, ended up going into early rain delays, and the pitchers didn't come back in. So it was a total disaster. So it probably better that you ended up missing it. But
yeah, not that my football night went well.
Anyway, the point being about the Bryce Elder and Kyle Muller is that Muller, I think, is probably a better pitcher than Elder is. Okay. And we saw all the success that Elder had yesterday. And then also when it comes to Muller, pretty good stuff. You mentioned the strikeout stuff, average fastball velocity right around 95 miles per hour. Major leagues, we haven't seen a whole lot of them this year. But in the minor leagues this year, 29.3% K rate, and the projections from Zips and Steamer, which I know both you and I like to look at when we don't have a massive sample size for a pitcher at the big league level, they've got him projected as a 23 to 24% K rate guy. Pretty solid there. So I like the matchup against the Nationals, large field tournaments. I agree. He's somebody worth being overweight to, especially at low ownership.
Was there someone else that you had in mind when you asked that question? Because it sounded like when I answered Muller and then threw it back, you were, maybe not thinking of him.
No, I mean, there's a lot of pitchers. I wasn't really expecting you to answer anybody, to be honest.
Okay.
I was just kind of curious where you're at. But I do have a little bit of interest in German Marquez, who is only $5,700 on DK. FanDuel, he's a little more expensive, but also almost no ownership there. We've got German Marquez, 7,500 projected for 2% ownership. It can't be overstated how much of a park upgrade it is to go from Coors Field to San Francisco. And Marquez, I still believe, is a really talented pitcher. I do for sure think he's taken a little bit of a step back this year, because in the past, we've seen him legitimately be a top-end starting pitcher when he's away from Coors Field. That hasn't been the case this year, but the stuff is still there. Average fastball velocity right around 96 miles per hour. And I do think that's enough for him to generate strikeouts when he needs to at times. And also looking at some of the splits for German Marquez, he's been considerably better in the second half of the year than the first half of the year. So I do think that's also something, maybe a slow start to the year. Maybe he's a little banged up at one point. But Marquez, just based on the overall talent, the stuff that he has, and the $5,700 price tag on DraftKings with low ownership, that is somebody that I have my eye on. Are you getting to him at all in tournaments?
He's in the player pool. We'll see how much he comes up for me. But I do agree with everything you said about the spot. I think the price is nice. 75 on FanDuel, 57 on DK. I would be there at 57 on DK for sure if I was playing that slate. I think the 9.3% ownership is probably a little bit low. So that's a spot on both sides for the DraftKings slate. You can focus on grabbing some SP2 shares from this game. There's upside for both pitchers. Agree with everything that you said. I do think German Marquez is a better pitcher than we've seen this year, but he has been much better in the second half, like you were suggesting. He's down to a 4.06 xFIP overall. The ERA is still sitting up at 5.15. He's got a 1.40 whip with an 8.1% walk rate, and he's not striking out as many hitters, 5 percentage points lower than last year at 18.6 this year. So there are definitely some warts from what we've seen from this pitcher in the past, but for that price, he doesn't have to be spectacular. He doesn't have to be the German Marquez of old, because he's priced to be this clunky version. And a lot of those numbers are coming from Coors Field. And like you said, there's basically no bigger swing park wise than going from Coors Field to this one. So it's a good spot for him at that price. On FanDuel, I don't think I need to go there. Like, I just rather, if I'm going cheap with pitcher, I would just rather drop down and grab some Muller shares at the even lower price. But I think he's definitely in the mix in that range. So I wouldn't tell anybody they were making a mistake if they said, hey, I'm going to take 10% and go 5 to Muller and 5 to Marquez. Totally fine.
Yeah, and that's really where I'm at with him. Like, if he was picking up any kind of meaningful ownership, I would just stay away. But if you want expensive offense today and you really need the salary savings on DK, I don't mind it, especially because there aren't that many pitchers I look at and I'm like, oh, I'm crazy confident in this guy outside of maybe like Patrick Sandoval on DK relative to his price. And then, FanDuel also getting a relatively cheap price and he's 2% owned. So that's where I'm at in terms of a really low unowned kind of punt pitcher. Anything else that catches your eye, or should we start moving on to stacks?
For his talent, I hate the matchup, but for his talent, Pablo Lopez is dramatically underowned as well. 23.5% strikeout rate guy, 3.59 xFIP, sitting at 0.5% owned on FanDuel, 1.6 on DK. Is there a pitch limitation I'm not aware of with him or anything? I know it's a terrible matchup against the Mets, but
not that I'm aware of.
I hadn't seen anything.
Yeah, it's just a bad. Although you never like.
I think he's just falling by the wayside ownership wise, right?
At this point of the season, weird shit happens with pitch counts all the time. Yeah. I don't know if you've taken notice of that, but I mean, we've seen all the time where guys just end up coming out of games. But I mean, 6 2/3 innings in each of the last 2 starts.
Yeah, and reliably usually pitches pretty deep. 167 in 30 starts this year. A little bit less reliably, I guess, this year. But I just at the ownership. For his talent level, I do think there's a little bit of tournament upside there. If you want to throw some darts against the Mets, it's a quality version of the Mets lineup. I don't see any real holes in this, but I just think at 1.6% owned for 8,600 on DK, 8,600 on FanDuel at 0.5% owned, I can grab a few tournament shares. And if he comes through, he comes through. If he doesn't, he doesn't.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is when it comes to him, because you just asked about restrict, if I'm not mistaken, I think he threw a season high in pitches his last start, which I know because it was a good sweat. I had his over under for strikeouts in his last start was 6.5, which is fairly high for Pablo Lopez. And I bet the under in that start. And he was at 6, I'm pretty sure 5 through 6 innings. And he was at like 90 something pitch. I'm like, surely he's done. And they brought him back out for the 7th inning. I'm like, oh my God. And he goes out there and he was getting these 0-2 counts and hitters were just fouling it off. And then eventually they took him out of the game because his pitch count got up to 105. But yeah, just because I remember watching that start, I'm pretty sure there's no restrictions to be worried about here.
Yeah. So I think he's just, we're getting that low ownership, just be, A, the matchup, and B, there's a lot of other spots. So he's just kind of falling off the side of the road here. But I do think it's one that you can go to in limited shares in tournaments and don't expect a ton. He's going up against the Mets. They're a very good offense. They don't strike out a ton, but he's good enough to get through this team. He's done it in the past, I'm sure. I'm not looking at his game logs or anything, but I think there's a little bit of upside in that spot for that low ownership.
So we've got some people asking about Jose Berrios. So I guess we might as well talk about him here just briefly. But Berrios, very, very low owned. What is it? 1.5% owned. Yeah, 1.4% over on FanDuel right now. DK, he's projected for 4.6% ownership. Cheaper than we normally see him, but this has just been a disaster of a season for Jose Berrios. The one thing that I would say about him, if anybody is looking to play him in tournaments, which by the way, I'm not, I'm going to be stacking the Yankees against him. I've been very anti-Berrios this year. He's been a replacement level pitcher. Is he shows flashes. Like there are random starts where all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's the Berrios from previous years. It happens like once a month or so, and then he kind of gets his ass kicked in most of his other starts. But it's just been a terrible year for Jose Berrios. It's hard for me to advocate playing him. It does seem like Ryan Stubbs in the chat is considering it based on some of his questions. But any thoughts on Jose Berrios? I'm about to talk about Yankee stacks in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm much more on the Yankee side of that equation. I was off of Berrios coming into the season. I was never really a big fan of him. I think he's been historically a league average pitcher. He's had one good season. Yeah, he's only like 27, 28, something like that. He had one good season coming into his prime last year, and then he's kind of regressed back to just mediocre league average. He's fine, but he's targetable for home run upside, 43.2% hard hit on the season this year with a 9.9% barrel rate, a 4.13% home run rate, 4.22 xFIP, sub 20% strikeout rate. Last year, he was good. I'm not quibbling with last year, 26.1% strikeouts, 3.59 xFIP. But before that, he was never that guy. And since then, he hasn't been that guy. I'm not rostering Jose Berrios. I didn't roster him all that much in his good year last year. So just not a guy for me.
Yep, totally on the same page. And it looks like we've wrapped up all the pitchers. I don't see any more questions in the Discord channel either. We've got a super chat here from Eddie Sejas. We'll hit on that in a second. But first, shout out to Prize Picks, the sponsor of today's show. If you guys have not signed up at Prize Picks yet, click on the link below in the description box. And when you sign up over at Prize Picks, you'll get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit, which you want that free money. It's a good way to help build your bankroll. We also got a lot of tools over at Stokastic.com that are going to help you build some of those player prop cards over on Prize Picks. So I'm going to pull up the projections that we have for Prize Picks, and let's walk through this and see if there's anything that we like, Terry. Anything stands out. All right. So some of the props that are looking good for us over on Prize Picks for today. Well, here's a very low one. All right. So Adrian Hauser. I also a pitcher I don't think is going to work, especially deep into the game. And it's a tough matchup against the St. Louis Cardinals. But
yeah, I don't like
Adrian Hauser's over-under for strikeouts is 2.5 today. We talked about some of these pitchers. Tough matchups and that might not be good. We haven't projected for 3.3. So that has the over winning 63% of the time. You can't really advocate for the pitcher. You can't advocate for the matchup. But when somebody has a 2.5 strikeout prop and we haven't projected for 3.3, the over does look good there. So I'm curious, where do you have Adrian Hauser projected for strikeouts tonight?
My implied number is 3.43, and then my model gives them a tiny boost to slightly over 4. But I don't think I believe in that 4 number. I'm more inclined to say in the mid 3s is probably right. But yeah, getting over 2.5. I mean, any pitcher in the major leagues can come out, trip over the mound, and get 2.5 strikeouts. So yeah, I think that's a playable spot. I don't love attacking the Cardinals bats for really anything with pitching though in general.
Yeah. I don't either, but for this one particular purpose where I look at it, it's like, oh, look, the strikeout prop is 2.5. We haven't projected over 3. You know, there's certain times where just the price is right. And that kind of is one that stands out here. One other one that I like for today, this pitcher isn't on the main slate, but Hunter Green. I love Hunter Green. He's one of my favorite pitching prospects. I love watching him pitch, but these strikeout props have gotten really inflated. It is 7.5 for him today. And something else when it comes with young pitchers, we're at a point in the season where I think we're going to really start to see some of these younger pitchers get their innings dialed back. And I just find it hard to reliably project over 7.5 strikeouts for Hunter Green. We haven't projected for 6.8 today, under projected win 62% of the time. So give me under 7.5 strikeouts for Hunter Green It's a big number. I love the pitcher. I like the matchup, but kind of like Adrian Hauser, I don't like the pitcher. I don't like the matchup, but the number makes sense. So it's kind of the same story with Hunter Green.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about a prized arm in that system, so I wouldn't be totally shocked if this was one of the kids that we see them treat with kid gloves. That said, 6 innings, 5 innings, 6-1, 6 and a third, 6.65 his last handful of starts. Struck out 8 last time, 11 before that, 8. He's a premium strikeout option, but that is a big number. He's going up against the Pirates premium strikeout spot, another pincushion team that we've been just targeting with pitching all season long. But I think there is enough reason to think that that's a little bit aggressively high. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay, so let's answer these super chats now that we've got going on. And we have this one from Eddie Seja. Wants to know the best 2 pitchers for DK GPP and the best stack. So my favorite GPP pitchers over on DK are Patrick Sandoval and Logan Webb. And for my favorite overall stack on DK, let's see if the ownership has changed. I'm going to refresh this as we're about to talk about stacks. By the way, Top Stacks tool, free to use today. If you guys are playing DraftKings, FanDuel, go check out the Top Stacks tool. You've got the projected odds of teams to be the highest scoring team. You've got the projected ownership as a team. It's a really useful resource to figure out how to allocate ownerships to different teams or just which ones are being under-owned to prioritize in smaller field tournaments. But ownership here. And by the way, my single entry stack, because DM Brian, he'd sent a message in Discord and asking me who my single entry stack was going to be. He'd sent it at the top of the show. I wanted to wait until we were getting to stacks. For single entry, it is going to be the Yankees for me. Large field tournaments, the offense that I think warrants the most ownership, probably the Atlanta Braves against Paulo Espino. They are a little bit overowned, but not to the point where I think they need to be avoided. And then also their top stack odds are so much higher than any other team. So for large field tournaments, the team that I think that makes the most sense are the Braves. We have them with 12% top stack odds over on DK. No other team is above 8. And then over on FanDuel, same thing, 11.5% top stack odds. So Terry, the next question we have is from Andrew Jennison. He wants to know, what is the top single entry stack for FanDuel today? So if you're playing one lineup on FanDuel, what would be the team that you would go towards as your favorite stack?
Scrolling down the old leverage column here and looking with that combined with our stack score or our probability of being the top stack, a team we just talked about a minute ago in that strikeout prop is kind of popping in my eyes. It's a team I've gone to quite a bit this season. The St. Louis Cardinals look like they're very low on 4.7% collective ownership against the 6.8% probability of being the top stack. That's roughly half of what the Braves are getting up at the top, but they're getting significantly lower owned. So I love the idea of grabbing some Braves in a lot of lineups, of course, but I think people are sleeping on the Cards. And I think you made a good call there with the Yankees on the other side. It carries through to FanDuel as well. The Yanks under own 3.1% ownership share, 1.0 leverage score, 3.5 stack score, slightly under a 5% probability of being the top overall stack. But again, that plays, it's roughly half of what the top stack is getting and nowhere near the ownership. We know there are premium bats in that lineup. And I just cited a couple of the numbers and a couple of the reasons to target Berrios. So I think there's upside for the Yanks there as well.
Yeah. And that is for DraftKings. My single entry stack it's going to be the New York Yankees. I've got my lineup all set to go.
I'll say Cards to answer that question officially, because I don't want to be like homerish and say the Yanks, and they're a little bit higher in our stack score. So I know that person was looking for one team. So the Cards.
Yeah. So for DraftKings, I'm going with the Yankees in single entry. We talked about some of Berrios' struggles this year, and here's what I like about stacking against him. He still has enough name value to where teams are never popular against Berrios. I can't remember a time that we've had this year where even despite all the Berrios struggles, where a team's been, 10, 15% owned or anything like that against him. It's just not the case. And today over on DK, we've got the Yankees with 4.4% aggregate ownership, over on FanDuel, 3% aggregate ownership. And one other thing to add to that, all of the Yankees ownership in recent slates gets driven up by Aaron Judge. So as low as this number is, still a lot of it is because of Judge. So we have Judge projected for current ownership is at, it would help if my computer was responding to me scrolling. Here we go. All right. So Judge is projected for 12% ownership. Everybody else is projected to be really low owned on DK. So I don't think the Yankees are going to be represented as 5-man stacks at all today, because nobody else on the team is projected for north of 5% ownership. It's Judge at 12%, everybody else 5% and below. So I think we're getting a really contrarian stack here with the New York Yankees. And when things go south for Jose Berrios, they go really south and really quickly. So his good starts have been really good this year. His bad starts have been really, really bad. Last start, for instance, he goes up against the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Rays offense, it's been mediocre this year, and it was a game in Tampa Bay, pitcher-friendly park. 2 innings, gives up 6 runs. And we've seen a lot of those kind of starts against him. The Cubs, he pitched against the Cubs like 3 weeks ago. He was chalky in that start. 5 innings, 4 runs, gives up a homer, 4 strikeouts. The guy's all over the place. We've seen a lot of blow-up starts from him. If I could get an offense against him, especially a potent offense at low ownership, I'm going to be backing it. That's what I'm on the Yankees. I know, Terry, people know you're a Yankees fan. They think you might be biased. This isn't even biased. This is a good team to get to.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys seen me be biased? I always call it out saying like, hey, this sounds like a homer pick, and that's how I approach this team. And when they're looking really good in a good spot and they're under-owned, I tend to have a lot of Yankees. When they're over-owned and people are getting to them aggressively and the spot looks soft, but maybe it's not, I tend to under-own the Yankees. I treat them exactly the same as I do everybody else. So it's not a homer pick. It's just a good, well, it's a decent baseball team at this point. That's some homerism. Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Gleyber Torres, Josh Donaldson, Giancarlo Stanton, and I'll throw Oswaldo Cabrera into the mix. He's had a nice little start to his career here. I think all 6 of those hitters are perfectly playable. And then if you need to mix and match in some cheap shares of IKF, Higgy, and Aaron Hicks from the bottom of the lineup, you can get the odd long ball out of Aaron Hicks. You can get some on base out of Aaron Hicks and some correlated scoring. It's not been great this season. You can get the long ball out of Higgy. I like the hard hit rate and the barrel rate for Higgy, 47.9% hard hit, 9.7% barrel rate. It's translated only to 8 home runs at this point. But remember, he had that awful drought for the first like 2.5 months of the season where he didn't hit any. So he's kind of come on a little bit, and he still hits everything hard when he makes contact. IKF, everybody can take or leave. He's a just hit tool specialist type of a guy.
117 WRC plus for Oswaldo Cabrera in September. He's still really cheap on FanDuel and DraftKings. So I could get behind him. He had pretty good minor league numbers this year. He's still young at 23 years old. He's not a ranked prospect, and I'm usually a little dubious of guys like that, but his numbers all look good. And the other thing too that's been impressive about it, like he's played really well in the field at multiple positions as well. So
they have another guy on this team who, if this kid turns into and molds himself in the vein of Marwin Gonzalez, I think he's going to have a nice long career. He already plays every position on the field except for, except catcher and on the mound. I think he could learn a lot from Marwin here and pick up exactly where Marwin leaves off when he doesn't rejoin this team next year. I like the kid. Not as like a star, but as a serviceable, like utility knife kind of a player. I think he's got upside.
All right, let's talk about teams we think are overowned. And this is one that's going to make me, a little uncomfortable to say because the Red Sox and Orioles were in a game that scored 1 million runs yesterday. But I think Boston's going overrepresented. They're one of the most popular teams over on FanDuel, 11.8% projected ownership over on that was on FanDuel. DK also pretty popular, projected for right around 10% ownership. This is one of the most negatively leveraged teams for us in the top stacks tool. And I just think Kyle Bradish is a lot better than people realize, and a pitcher who has a lot of ability, one of the top pitching prospects in the Orioles organization, a system that's just loaded with prospects across the board, pitching, hitting. This team is going to be a problem in the AL East for a while now. But we also saw Bradish just come off a start where he totally shut down the Houston Astros, looked really good. And that's the kind of talent I think he has. His minor league numbers this year, the brief time he was in there, were really impressive. 1.83 ERA, 2.44 FIP. In the big leagues, he does have a 4.65 ERA, but I think there's been some bad luck involved there, so his underlying numbers look better. It's not to say that the Red Sox can't get to him. I just think that they're going so over-owned, and probably a little bit of bias after what happened yesterday, too, that would drive up their ownership. Then I'm not really looking to get to the Boston Red Sox against Kyle Bradish. How about you? Is this a team that you think is being over-owned, or are you okay with the ownership they have?
No, that looks a little high to me. A little bit better on DK. A lot of these guys popping into like the mid-teens, over 10% for guys like Rob Refsnyder in the lineup on FanDuel. I can pass on that spot. Maybe not entirely. Maybe they'll creep in around the edges in a few lineups. But I agree. I have enough healthy respect for Kyle Bradish at this point. 22% strikeout rate, over 110 and a third. He gives up a little bit of premium contact with a 40.1% hard hit rate and a 3.42% home run rate. But that's also just some signs of a growing pitcher. He's got a 3.90 xFIP to that 4.65 ERA. So he's been better under the covers than he has on the surface. I really like the pitcher. It's definitely not the insult it used to be to say that somebody's the top pitcher pitcher in the Orioles organization. They are a deep farm system now, and this kid is good. He's part of it. So yeah, I don't need any part of the Red Sox at that kind of ownership. They're more playable on DK where they're lower owned because of a couple higher prices. I'll say that much about the Sox. I like the other side of this one a little bit better with the Orioles bats.
Yeah, so talk to me about the Orioles, because I agree with you. They're also going to be a popular team, but I think their ownership is more warranted than the Red Sox ownership for a couple of reasons. Number one, Baltimore might have a better offense than Boston right now, considering how well all these young guys have hit. And I think Kyle Bradish is better than Michael Wacha. So when you consider there's comparable ownership going to Baltimore as there is to Boston, I do prefer the Baltimore side of the game. Is that kind of where you're at as well?
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at. It looks like that's where our top stacks tool is at as well. They're drawing lower ownership at a higher probability of being the top stack. They're still technically slightly more negatively leveraged than the Red Sox. That's on the FanDuel slate. And then jumping over to DK, it looks like it's a similar story with the ownership not being quite as egregious. The Sox and Orioles are essentially evenly owned on the DK slate. But on FanDuel, I think you're gaining advantage by going to the Orioles over the Sox here. And they're drawing similar ownership. You know, a lot of these guys into the 10 and 12 and 15% range, but there's just a lot of good options up and down that lineup. Like a hitter like Austin Hayes hiding in the 8 spot, 1.5% owned. He's got 16 home runs and 551 plate appearances on the season. He's 7% better than average creating runs, decent contact profile, and, you know, mid-level price. I have no issues including him. Kyle Stowers is a lefty bat with a little bit of power against a pitcher like Wacha. You can get to the bottom of this lineup and thread them together with the top. Nobody's expensive. All the ownership numbers are fine. Like Ryan Mountcastle cleaning up for 2,700 on FanDuel should probably be more popular than 15% owned in this spot. Wacha, 20% strikeout rate on the season, 3.98 xFIP, 2.51% home runs, 34.5% hard hit. So he's serviceable. He's Michael Wacha. He's a serviceable veteran pitcher who's better in real life than he is for fantasy. But I think he's gettable with this young team here. So I think that definitely gets us some shares of Orioles.
Yeah, same page here. It's a fairly high priority stack for me. We'll talk about some more contrarian stacks in a second here. We got about 8 minutes left to go. So if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost at 80,000 subscribers on the Stokastic page here. We've got, what do we have, Jordan? What do we have? Like 100 or so left to get to 80K? Yeah. So
gonna need a college football stadium when we have the convention.
That's true. We're close to filling up the Ohio State Stadium. Well, actually, they have fit like what 96,000 people or something ridiculous.
Yeah, some of the college ones are just absurd with going over 100,000 people, like Michigan and so on. That gets a little bananas. What I love to think about is with these NFL shows that we do when there's 4,500 to 5,000 people in the rooms. That's bigger than Carnegie Hall, which is just boggles my mind.
Should we start?
Carnegie Hall's like 2,600.
We should start doing live DFS shows at Carnegie Hall and sell it.
And we'll sell them out with a line around the block.
That'll be the we'll go to Carnegie Hall. We'll get up on stage. And we'll all sit on a computer and build lineups while people watch us. We're
taking Live Before Lock on the road next year, gang.
I would do it. I would do it.
That would be fun, actually. I would do that.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 80,000. And another reason you guys should be liking and subscribing. I just checked out the schedule for tomorrow. Terry, guess who I'm on Live Before Lock with tomorrow night?
Is it me?
Oh, no, Eric Lindquist. Oh, okay. People are going to want to hear a rebuttal. They want to hear, no.
So it might be me if he doesn't.
Eric Lindquist is on Live Before Lock with me tomorrow. People are going to want to know. They're going to want to hear a rebuttal. They want to hear Eric's side of the story. So that'll be a good way to follow up with everything tomorrow. Super chat from Eric Traub. I remember when there was a push to get to 69,420. Those were good times. We smashed that number. Now we're looking forward to 80,000. And then then we'll be looking forward to 690,690. That'll be the next big milestone. What are some of the contrarian stacks you're looking at here, Terry? Because we've talked about the Yankees as a low-owned team to get to. We've talked about the Cardinals. These are low-owned teams, but they're not, like 1% owned or anything like that. Is there any offenses you're eyeing that's like a 1-2% owned offense that nobody's on you think the field is missing out on?
So I tell you, I wasn't really like eyeing them in terms of thinking about them all day long, just salivating at the prospect of dropping them into my lineups. But I'm getting quite a bit of the Phillies and I'm getting quite a bit of the Blue Jays, and it doesn't look like many other people are. I hadn't really dug into them too much. Blue Jays going up against Jameson Tyone. serviceable but gettable pitcher. Phillies going up against Marcus Stroman. I would say the same thing about Marcus Stroman. So I am getting a lot more than I expected of both of those teams. They're very much in the mix for me. I'm making some adjustments, and like I just dropped the Red Sox down. They were coming up quite a bit naturally, and we just talked through that part of the equation, and I want to make that adjustment. So I'm dropping them a lot, and I'm finding that I have to naturally boost the Cards, who I mentioned earlier as the single entry stack that I liked. They're not getting any respect against Hauser at the top of the board there on the stacks, but they're also not coming up naturally for me, which is a little bit concerning. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a nudge. I'm also going to give the Mariners a nudge because they were sitting at the top of my power index in their matchup, and I'm not getting to a ton of them naturally either, which is, again, kind of concerning me a little bit, but I think that's a playable spot for Seattle going up against like a bullpen type game for the Rangers here. So I think I'm going to have a little bit of Mariners, JP Crawford, Ty France, Mitch Haniger, Eugenio Suarez, Cal Raleigh, Carlos Santana, even Jared Kelenic in the 7 spot can certainly, it's really, I mean, with Dylan Moore and Adam Frazier, they're low end players, but they've got multi-position in their 2,100 on FanDuel, 29 and 22 respectively on DK. And they're drawing a little more attention on DK, but that's a serviceable 1 through 9, even without Julio Rodriguez in that lineup in this spot. So I'll have a little bit of Mariners here as well.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a sensible call out. The Mariners low owned on, actually the Mariners a little popular on DK. I just noticed.
Yeah, a little popular on DK.
Yeah, 7% owned. They have come up on FanDuel a little bit as well, because that was a team that I don't think was picking up much ownership earlier in the day. For me, a team that I am going to shout out here is the Philadelphia Phillies, a little bit healthier now than they were earlier in the year. Marcus Stroman is just not the same pitcher anymore. And it's not just that the results aren't elite. It's that there was a point in time where even when he was kind of more mediocre to above average from a real life standpoint, that we just didn't want to target him in DFS because he was such a heavy ground ball pitcher. He still generates ground balls, but it's not quite the same. Instead of being a guy who's getting ground balls at a mid 60% rate, he's down to 50% this year. The home run to fly ball rate is at 14.7%. So we've got Stroman now. If we look at the velocity is down a little bit from peak years where he had a 94 mile per hour average fastball velocity. Now it's just a tick below 93. Maybe that's enough to kind of offset, or maybe it's just also all the injuries and age. He's 31 years old now. We got a pitcher who has the lowest ground ball rate of his career. The home run to fly ball rate is well above league average. He's going up against a tough offense. And I do think that this is a pitcher who just never gets targeted and probably should be targeted a little more often now because the results are not quite the same as they were previously.
Yeah, I am really happy to hear you say that you're eyeballing them as well, because like I said, they're coming up a lot more than I was thinking about them today. But I love the spot. I mean, on FanDuel especially, you're talking about most of these guys under 1% owned against Marcus Stroman. That doesn't sound right with the quality of this lineup. So yeah, the premium hitters are drawing a little bit more popularity, but Bryce Harper, 7.6% for under 4,000 on the FanDuel slate against Marcus Stroman. Yes, please. 6.3% for 5,400 is probably appropriate. Maybe even still a little low on DK, and everybody else under 3.5% on DK. Yeah, this seems like the field might be sleeping on this spot. I do agree, I do think there's, the lingering memory of Marcus Stroman and his ground ball quality and his ability to limit home run potential. But this year, 3.09% home run rate, a 42% hard hit, a lot of stuff still on the ground, 6.9% barrel, 7.6 degree average launch angle. But he's definitely gettable at this point in his career. So I'm happy that I'm getting to these Phillies now.
Yeah. And once again, because I was talking about really low owned teams to get to, 2% ownership for the Phillies on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So that's a team that I do think makes sense. Yeah. Terry, I think we've covered all the stacks and pitchers here. So let's give the people what we know they want. And that's Dom picks. So let's close it out. Which hitter are you picking to hit a home run today? And we'll judge. Actually, let's start with this. Is Aaron Judge going to hit his 61st home run today? I'm frankly getting really tired of the bullshit and the promotion of this.
It would be nice if he just gets it out of the way at this point and they can go back to focusing on winning. Since he's not projecting up near the top of my board overall, this time I'll say yes again. Last time I gave him the nod and said he's at the top of my board. This is the night. Confidently tonight he's not there, so I'll say that he is. He's getting over the magic number of 10, but he's not at the very top of my board. Mitch Haniger from the Seattle Mariners, who I talked about before. I'll go with Mitch as my home run pick here.
Did you see the story that came out about the Yankees rain delay at the Red Sox ESPN game on Sunday night?
No. What was the?
So the game is in an extended rain delay. The weather's really bad, and they wanted to call the game, and ESPN basically told them like, no, Aaron Judge is due up in the next half inning,
and we've got these TV rights.
We want to keep the game going. And basically, the field conditions were so bad, and it kept going on The only reason it got canceled was Aaron Boone apparently ended up talking to an ESPN executive during the rain delay. And he said, I don't think it's safe to play. He said, if you make us continue, I'm going to take Aaron Judge out of the game and he won't finish. And so then ESPN apparently, at least that's what the how the story went, that then ESPN okayed them canceling the game. But apparently there was a lot of pressure from the ESPN higher ups to wait out the rain and make it keep going because they wanted to get one more at bat out of Aaron Judge. But
that is the best managerial thing that Aaron Boone has done in possibly his entire tenure here. Big fan of that move. Not a big fan of Aaron Boone in general. Donnie Mattingly got clipped by the Marlins.
The homer off Tim Wakefield.
Say again?
He's got the homer off Tim Wakefield.
Oh, no, yeah. As a manager, no. As a player, he can. Okay. He's got a special place in my heart. I was at that game.
Yeah, so Aaron Boone, he had the homer off Tim Wakefield, and then he gets hurt in the offseason playing basketball. If that doesn't happen, A-Rod never comes to New York. But I'm going to say Aaron Judge hits the 61st homer today. Not only am I calling for the 61st homer today, Terry, he gets the monkey off his back and hits 2 homers. Double. So that's going to be my home run pick of the day. 2 homers for Aaron Judge. I know it's not very cool to pick Aaron Judge as our home run guy because it's easy. He's got 60 homers. He's about to set the record for most homers ever hit in the American League. But I'm calling for him for 2 homers. Does that count as a home run pick then?
I think that's fair. If you're calling it as a double dong, I think you got to be able to take it. So, yeah, I like that. Give him the old Albert Pujols approach to breaking the record.
All right. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck tomorrow. Eric makes his return. We'll discuss everything he's doing. So.